My name is Layla, and I'm 37 years old. I work as a homemaker and have been married to my husband Jimmy for 13 years. Currently, we live together as a family of four with our daughter Karen and my mother-in-law. A few years ago, after my father-in-law passed away, we moved in with my mother-in-law at her home. Living with her turned out to be far from peaceful. Soon after we moved in, she began to criticize and harass me. "Is dinner ready?" she would demand as I cooked in the kitchen. "It better not take too long. Everyone's hungry." She would taste the food as I prepared it. "Layla, this pot roast has no flavor. It's awful," she'd complain. "How could you mess it up even after tasting it?" Despite her constant complaints, she never offered to help with dinner or any other household chores. During the day, she would simply lounge around the house. When dinner was finally served and we all sat down to eat, Jimmy and Karen would praise the food that earlier she had criticized. "This pot roast is delicious," they'd say. "Yeah, Mom, it's really tasty," Karen would add. At that point, my mother-in-law would change her tune. "Yes, the seasoning is just right," she'd say, contradicting her earlier criticism. Despite her harsh treatment of me, she always spoke kindly to Jimmy and Karen, never wanting them to see her differently. In front of Jimmy and Karen, she sometimes praised me. I thought to myself, today, Layla did all the housework considering my health. She's truly a capable wife, isn't she, Layla? Deep down, I knew that my mother-in-law had forced all the household chores onto me, but I dared not speak up. Whenever I tried to deny her false praise, she would subtly kick my leg under the table where no one else could see. "Yes, that's true," I would manage to say, offering a forced smile. Jimmy, unaware of the truth, would thank me warmly. "Thanks for always being so kind to my mom," he'd say with a smile, believing her words despite the reality. I could never hide my bewilderment at my mother-in-law's blatant attitude. Because of this, Jimmy never noticed that I was being harassed. He even thought that my mother-in-law and I got along well. Jimmy cared deeply for his mother, especially after his father passed away. His concern for her was unmatched. I couldn't bring myself to say anything negative about my mother-in-law to Jimmy, who loved her dearly. This fondness for her was another reason I kept silent and never sought anyone's advice. When it was decided that we would move in with my in-laws, Karen exclaimed happily, "Yay, I get to live with Grandma now." She adored her grandmother, and they were very close, always playing together and even taking baths together. My mother-in-law's harassment towards me escalated. Once after I returned from shopping, I found the room in disarray. "Hey, mother-in-law, what happened? Why is everything so messy?" I asked, surprised. With a smug look, she replied, "I couldn't find something, and before I knew it, it became a mess." I knew the house would be turned upside down just from looking for something. Mother-in-law had surely done it to harass me. "Sorry, I'm going to dinner with friends now. Cleaning's on you," she added before quickly leaving the house. As expected, I ended up spending the entire day cleaning. I couldn't attend to any other chores. When mother-in-law returned home, she commented, "Laundry, dishes, cleaning, none of it's done. What on earth were you doing?" I bit back my anger at her shameless behavior. I quietly continued with the housework, feeling the pressure of my mother-in-law's constant criticism. "Hurry up, or everyone will come home. If Jimmy realizes what an incapable wife you are, he'll surely divorce you," she taunted, never lifting a finger to help, only hurrying and nagging me. As the evening wore on and dinner remained nowhere near ready, my anxiety grew. In the end, dinner was late, she scolded. "What? Dinner's not ready yet? I'm sorry, it will be ready soon. Just wait a bit longer," I replied, trying to stay composed. Jimmy, concerned, asked, "Are you feeling ill?" "No, it's not that. Today has been a bit hectic," I started to explain, but a glance from my mother-in-law silenced me. Her glare warned me not to speak. Mother-in-law seemed determined to portray me as incapable, hoping Jimmy would grow frustrated and consider divorce. Yet Jimmy's kindness prevailed. Instead of blaming me, he expressed concern for my well-being. Unamused, mother-in-law's harassment towards me intensified. Lately, it extended beyond me to interfere in Karen's affairs. "You two seem to be pushing Karen into attending a private middle school," she accused. "Yes, we are. Is there a problem with that?" I replied firmly. "It's cruel to make her study late every night for exams." "Stop it right now," she demanded. "We are not going to stop just because you said so. Karen herself wants this," I countered. "Kids should just play and have fun. There's no need to force them to study," she insisted. Working hard now will open up more options for her future, and Karen wants this, I argued. You were not doing it for Karen, you were forcing it on her, aren't you? She accused sharply. That's not true, I replied firmly. As Karen dedicated herself to studying and attending tutoring sessions, our time together diminished, displeasing my mother-in-law. Just give up on the middle school exams. It's a waste of time, she concluded, dismissing Karen's aspirations. I couldn't contain my anger at her command. Mother-in-law's disrespect towards Karen's feelings and her selfish remarks infuriated me. Isn't it normal to support Karen when she wants to do this? I retorted, my frustration evident. What? How dare you talk back? Mother-in-law seemed taken aback, as I had never spoken up like this before. Karen's exams have nothing to do with you, mother-in-law, I asserted firmly. What do you mean, nothing to do? I'm her grandmother, she countered sharply. Realizing arguing would lead nowhere, I decided to leave. Enough of this, I'm going to pick up Karen, I stated, trying to diffuse the tension. Mother-in-law continued to harass me in front of Jimmy and Karen, seemingly unable to let go of my defiance. Today's dinner looks plain. Is this all we have? She criticized, clearly still upset with me. You can't even think about feeding a growing child. I'm sorry, I replied calmly. Finally, Jimmy couldn't remain silent any longer and snapped at his mother. Come on, Mom, don't complain about the meal that Layla made. His outburst caught mother-in-law off guard, and she quickly backpedaled. Oh, I'm sorry. That's not what I meant to say. Not wanting to escalate the conflict further, I brushed it off. It's fine. After dinner, while I was washing dishes, my mother-in-law came over and muttered ominously, "Remember this," before retreating to her room. From then on, every day was filled with fear, wondering what she might do next. Then one day, it was the day of Karen's acceptance announcement. We nervously headed to the venue. When we checked the bulletin board, Karen's number was clearly displayed there. You did it, Karen. Awesome, you got accepted, we exclaimed, overjoyed. Karen had been studying tirelessly for months, and her efforts had paid off with her passing the middle school exams. We have to celebrate today, I declared. Karen, what would you like to eat? Steak, it's my absolute favorite, Karen replied excitedly. Should we order delivery? Jimmy suggested. Hooray, Karen cheered. On my way home, I called the steakhouse and ordered a luxurious steak for delivery. We also decided to buy a cake, so I made a small detour to ask my mother-in-law to receive the steak delivery at the house. When I called her, she replied, "Understood, I'll take care of it." Due to various detours and delays, we didn't get home until well past lunchtime. I'm starving. I want to eat the steak now, Karen exclaimed eagerly as we arrived home. You're right, we're late. The steak should be here, so let's eat plenty, okay? I reassured her. As we entered the house, we ran into my mother-in-law's friends leaving, who all thanked us for the feast in unison before departing. I felt a sinking feeling in my stomach and hurried inside. The dining table was in disarray, the remnants of the steak delivery strewn about. Mother-in-law, did you eat the steak? I asked, trying to keep my composure. Ah, if it's the delivery steak, I enjoyed it with my friends at a luncheon. You'll pay for it later, she replied nonchalantly. What are you doing? I exclaimed, unable to hide my frustration. You were probably planning to order delivery and slack off from housework. I won't allow that, she retorted defiantly. This was supposed to celebrate Karen's success. I reminded her sharply. I had informed mother-in-law beforehand that today was the day Karen's acceptance to middle school would be announced, but she seemed to have forgotten or ignored my words. Karen and Jimmy arrived shortly after. Karen had overheard our conversation in the corridor and was in tears. Rayma saw me, Karen sobbed, her excitement turning to disappointment. Karen had been eager to share her success with her grandmother, but it seemed mother-in-law hadn't even remembered it was the day of Karen's announcement. I thought it was understandable for Karen to cry. Mom, today was Karen's middle school acceptance announcement. How could you forget such an important day? That's awful, I confronted my mother-in-law. She seemed unable to hide her agitation. What? Today, Layla? Why didn't you tell me earlier? I did tell you, I insisted, my frustration mounting. I was too certain to even feel angry. Karen worked hard and got accepted, so we were going to celebrate by eating her favorite steak, I continued, trying to reason with her. To think you'd eat it with your friends? I can't believe it, mother-in-law exclaimed defensively. No, it wasn't like that. I really didn't know, I countered. You didn't know? I called you about the delivery, didn't I? She challenged. I hesitated, unsure how to respond. Mom, did you eat it on purpose? Karen asked tearfully. On purpose, you say? Mother-in-law's face paled, and she began to sweat. Desperately, she tried to think of an excuse but seemed at a loss for words. I've suspected this for a while, but you really are harassing Layla, aren't you? I confronted her directly. It seemed Jimmy had a vague idea of what was going on, but since I hadn't talked to him about it, he had watched the situation unfold silently. Suddenly, mother-in-law approached Karen and said, I'm sorry. Let's all go to the steakhouse. I'll pack, Karen responded bitterly. I hate Grandma. She pushed mother-in-law away and rushed to her room. The shock of being rejected by her beloved granddaughter seemed to hit mother-in-law hard. She froze, sitting on the floor where she had landed. Later, I gathered the courage to tell Jimmy everything about how mother-in-law had been harassing me. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Jimmy asked, his expression grave. I couldn't say anything when I thought about you and Karen, I replied, feeling a mix of relief and regret. I'm sorry for forcing you to endure this all this time, Jimmy said earnestly. You don't have to endure it anymore. Jimmy suggested that we move to ensure I wouldn't be harassed anymore. Since Karen also expressed her desire not to live with mother-in-law anymore, we were able to leave the house without any reservations. Thank you, I said gratefully. On moving day, while I was packing, mother-in-law came into the room. Are you really leaving the house? She asked, her face showing signs of sadness. Yes, you must be glad to be away from someone you hate, I replied, trying to keep my emotions in check. I don't exactly hate you, mother-in-law said softly. Could you please leave? You're in the way of my packing, I replied firmly, trying to drive her out of the room. She suddenly began to plead, please don't leave. I'll apologize for everything. Please. I can't bear to be apart from Karen, mother-in-law cried, refusing to let go despite my explanations. Feeling stuck, I made a proposal. Actually, we are moving to my parents' house. If you really can't bear to be apart from Karen, will you come with us? There was a moment of silence, then unexpected laughter filled the room. My father has a very stern and scary face, I added, half-jokingly, knowing mother-in-law was aware of this. Surprisingly, she agreed. I understand. That's fine with me, she said, shocking me with her acceptance. It became clear that mother-in-law's desire to be with Karen outweighed everything else. Since she wouldn't dare to harass me in front of my parents, and knowing I could report any issues to my father, I reluctantly agreed to live together. Jimmy reassured me, if anything happens with my mom coming along, feel free to kick her out. So we all moved to my parents' house and our cohabitation began. My father, aware of how mother-in-law had treated me and disrupted Karen's celebration, didn't directly blame her. However, his silent disapproval was palpable, causing mother-in-law to speak less and appear downcast. When my mother-in-law moved in with us, she surprised me by readily helping with the housework and working hard. I couldn't help but chuckle at her transformed appearance. Life went on without incident for a while, but eventually, mother-in-law reached her breaking point and yelled, I'm sick of this house. My father is intimidating and Karen can't get through to him. Jimmy's attitude toward mother-in-law had grown colder as he struggled to endure various tensions. Karen, let's go home together. Mother-in-law tried to forcefully pull a resistant Karen out of the house. Mother-in-law, stop it. Can't you see Karen doesn't want to go? I intervened. It's better to be with me than in this house, mother-in-law insisted. Just then, my father arrived. What are you doing? Knock it off, he demanded. Frightened by my father's stern tone, mother-in-law froze in fear. I allowed you to live with us because you said you didn't want to be apart from your granddaughter. But if you try to take Karen against her will, I'll call the police for kidnapping, my father warned. I didn't mean it that way, mother-in-law muttered, visibly shaken. Hearing my father's outburst, Jimmy rushed over. Mom, what are you doing? Just leave us. We can't deal with you anymore. I'm cutting ties completely. No, no way, mother-in-law protested. Karen shook off mother-in-law's hand and screamed, Get out. Even mother-in-law seemed shocked by Karen's outburst, dropping her shoulders and leaving the house in tears. Now, she lives a lonely life back at her own house. Afterward, mother-in-law became reclusive and even neighbors and friends began to keep their distance. On the other hand, our family lives peacefully every day. Karen studies diligently at her private school, and Jimmy has grown close to my parents, especially my father, with whom he enjoys daily drinks. Reflecting on everything, I wish I had spoken to Jimmy earlier and moved to my parents' house. Did you really think you could just move your parents into our home without asking me, Ryan? I asked, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. Ryan, my husband of 6 years, looked up from his laptop with a smirk I had grown to hate. Oh, Amelia, don't be so dramatic. It's just for a while. Besides, it's not like you have a say in this. His words felt like a slap in the face. The house, a lovely 2-story in a quiet suburb, wasn't just any house. It was the home my grandparents had left me, the place where I wanted to raise our son Lucas, away from the negativity of Ryan's family. You do remember that this house is in my name, right? I shot back, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. Ryan's smug look faded, replaced by a hint of uncertainty. Our 2-year-old son Lucas wandered into the room, oblivious to the tension. I forced a smile for him. As he reached up to me with his chubby hands, I picked him up and kissed his forehead, trying to calm down. I'm not okay with this, Ryan. Your parents have never respected me or our space. Why now? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Ryan shrugged, his indifference making me even more frustrated. Their family, Amelia. You wouldn't understand. Family. The word echoed in my mind mockingly. My own family, who ran a small but beloved coffee shop in town, had always been my safe haven. They were nothing like Ryan's controlling, overbearing parents. The doorbell rang, interrupting our standoff. Through the peephole, I saw them, Ryan's parents, suitcases in tow, ready to invade our life. My heart sank. Fine, Ryan, let them in. But this isn't over, I said angrily, handing Lucas to him before opening the door. Amelia, darling, cooed Ryan's mother as she swept past me without a second glance. His father followed, a stern man who'd barely acknowledged me since our wedding day. As they made themselves comfortable in my living room, I felt a familiar sense of intrusion. This was just the beginning, I realized. But as I watched them, something inside me changed. I was done being the compliant daughter-in-law, bending to their whims. I retreated to the kitchen, my mind racing. This was my home, my sanctuary, and I was ready to fight for it. The following days became a blur of unwanted changes. Ryan's mother, Elaine, had a knack for making herself overly present, which felt suffocating. She rearranged my kitchen, criticized my parenting, and acted as if our home belonged to her. Lucas shouldn't be eating that, Amelia. It's not healthy, Elaine scolded one morning as I prepared Lucas's breakfast. I held back a sharp reply, feeling her judgment like a slap. He's fine, Elaine. It's just cereal. She sighed, shaking her head. In our house, we believe in a proper diet. You really should learn. Her remarks felt like tiny jabs, wearing down my patience. Ryan, as usual, was no help, lost in his work and unaware of the growing tension. One evening, as I was putting Lucas to bed, Elaine barged into his room. He's still not sleeping through the night. You must be doing something wrong. Her words felt like a slap, making me doubt my abilities as a mother. I'm doing my best, I snapped back, unable to hide my frustration. Elaine's eyes narrowed. Clearly, your best isn't good enough. Maybe if you had a real job and some structure in your life. Anger surged through me. This is my house, Elaine. You're a guest here, remember that. Her laugh was cold. Oh dear, Ryan never mentioned how delusional you are. This is his house too, and as his mother, I have every right to be here. The next day, I reached my limit. I found Elaine in Lucas's room, going through his drawers. What do you think you're doing? I demanded, my voice shaking with anger. I'm just organizing. This room is a mess, she replied, not even bothering to look at me. That's it. I want you out of my house now, I exclaimed, feeling a mix of fury and desperation. Elaine turned to face me, her expression one of mock surprise. Your house? Oh, sweetie, you're just the wife. This is Ryan's house too, and he wants us here. I stormed out of the room, my mind swirling with thoughts, Ryan's betrayal, Elaine's intrusion, and how they ignored my feelings. It was too much. I was tired of being pushed around, tired of my home being invaded by people who didn't respect me. That night, as I lay in bed, a plan started forming in my mind. I was going to take back control of my life, my home, and my son's future. Ryan and his parents had crossed the line, and it was time for them to realize I wouldn't be their doormat anymore. The fight was just beginning, and I was ready. A few days later, Ryan dropped a bombshell during an already tense dinner. My parents need to stay with us longer. Their house is undergoing renovations, he said casually, as if it were no big deal. I felt my anger rise. Longer? Ryan, we never talked about them staying here in the first place. He shrugged, avoiding my eyes. It's just for a few more weeks. What's the problem? The problem? Your mother treats me like I don't belong in my own home. I snapped, frustration boiling over. Elaine, overhearing us, chimed in with her usual condescending tone. Amelia, you're overreacting. We're family. You should be more understanding. That night, sleep escaped me. Their words kept replaying in my mind, fueling a growing determination. I wasn't going to let them control me anymore. It was time to take a stand. The next morning, I called my brother Alex, who had always been there for me. They're taking over my life, Alex. I can't handle it anymore. I confessed, holding back tears. Alex's voice was strong and supportive. Amelia, you have to stand up for yourself. Don't let them push you around. It's your house, your rules. His words gave me the courage I needed. I decided to talk to Ryan, but this time, I would be prepared. I gathered evidence of Elaine's bossy behavior, the rearranged kitchen, the disrupted routines, her constant rude comments. The day of confrontation came. I waited until Elaine and Ryan were in the living room. We need to talk. Now, I declared, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. Ryan looked up, taken aback by my tone. What's going on, Amelia? It's about your parents, Ryan. Their constant interference, their disrespect for my boundaries. It stops today, I declared, holding up my list of complaints. Elaine scoffed. This is ridiculous. We're just trying to be helpful. Helpful? By undermining me all the time, by treating me like I don't matter in my own home. I shot back, my frustration boiling over. Ryan squirmed. Amelia, they're my parents. We can't just ask them to leave. No, Ryan. They're guests in my home, and they've stayed too long. Either they go, or I do with Lucas, I stated firmly, my determination clear. The room fell silent, my words hanging in the air. I saw Ryan's realization, but it was Elaine who spoke first. You wouldn't dare, she spat, her mask slipping. Try me. I won't regret standing up for myself, I retorted, my voice filled with determination. That night, Ryan's parents packed their bags. As they left, Elaine shot me a hateful look. You'll regret this, Amelia, she warned. But as the door closed behind them, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was the first step in taking back control of my life, and I was prepared for whatever challenges lay ahead. The days after Elaine and her husband left were strangely quiet. Ryan's attitude towards me became cold and distant, our interactions minimal and strained. Yet, I found comfort in the peace of my home and the joyful laughter of Lucas. One evening, as Lucas played with his toys, Ryan announced, I have to go on a business trip. I'll be gone for a few weeks. His tone was indifferent, as if our troubled relationship had taken a backseat to his work. Fine, I replied sharply, barely able to hide my relief at the thought of his absence. After Ryan left, the atmosphere in the house shifted, feeling liberating. I started undoing the changes Elaine had made, each adjustment feeling like a small victory. But the real turning point came when I stumbled upon a series of emails on Ryan's laptop, left carelessly open. They revealed an affair, a betrayal that cut deeper than any of his mother's snide remarks. Anger, hurt, and a sense of betrayal swirled inside me. I knew it was time for Ryan to face the consequences. I began planning my next moves meticulously, each step aimed at making Ryan and his family answer for their deceit and manipulation. First, I secured my financial and legal position. I contacted a lawyer, explained my situation, and started the divorce proceedings. Then I focused on the house, a symbol of my grandparents' legacy and my independence. I reached out to a real estate agent. I want to sell the house quickly and quietly, I told her. She was surprised but could sense the urgency in my voice. Are you sure about this, Amelia? Selling the house is a big step, she warned. I've never been more certain, I replied, fueled by a mix of betrayal and newfound determination. The house went on the market and offers came in quickly. The idea of Ryan returning to find his control gone brought a bittersweet satisfaction. In the midst of all this, I leaned on my family for support. My parents were shocked by Ryan's actions and stood by me and Lucas. "We're here for you, no matter what," my father assured me. Watching Lucas play, unaffected by the chaos, I silently promised to shield his happiness. Ryan's return was inevitable. But I was no longer the same person he left. Armed with truth and a plan, I was ready to confront him and take back my life. The day Ryan returned was heavy with tension. I had played out this moment in my head countless times, imagining every possible scenario. Yet my heart raced as I heard his key turn in the lock. "Amelia, I'm back," Ryan called out, his voice filling the now unfamiliar space. I stepped out from the kitchen, my stance firm. "Welcome home, Ryan. We need to talk." He glanced around, noticing the changes I'd made. "What's going on? The house looks different." I didn't falter. "I sold the house, Ryan. It's no longer ours." Disbelief washed over his face. "You did what? You can't just sell our house without telling me." "It's my house, Ryan. And after what I found out, I don't think you get a say anymore," I said, my voice steady but tinged with simmering anger. He scoffed, trying to regain control. "What are you talking about?" "The affair, Ryan. I know everything," I revealed, watching as his facade crumbled. His attempt to deny it was feeble and short-lived. "Amelia, it's not what you think." "I think it's exactly what it looks like. You betrayed me, our family," I retorted, the hurt clear in my voice. Ryan's expression shifted from shock to anger. "You're overreacting. We can fix this." "There's no we anymore, Ryan. I filed for divorce," I declared, handing him the papers. The ensuing conversation was a blur of accusations and denials. But I stood my ground. The man I married was gone, replaced by a stranger driven by selfish desires. As he stormed out, vowing to contest the divorce, I felt a mix of freedom and apprehension. I had taken the first step toward a new life, but the fight was far from over. In the following weeks, our situation became public. Ryan's once imposing parents were now entangled in their son's mess. Their attempts to reach out were met with silence. I had cut ties with them, focusing solely on Lucas and finalizing the divorce. The day of the court hearing arrived. Ryan looked defeated, the consequences of his actions finally sinking in. As the judge granted the divorce and custody of Lucas to me, I felt a sense of justice. Ryan's plea for reconciliation after the hearing fell on deaf ears. "You made your choice, Ryan. Now you have to live with it," I said, turning away from him for the last time. News of our divorce and Ryan's affair spread, tarnishing his reputation and relationships. His once proud and judgmental parents found themselves shunned by those who had once respected them. Walking out of the courthouse holding Lucas's hand, I realized this wasn't just an end, but a new beginning. A chance for me and my son to start fresh, free from deceit and manipulation. The future was uncertain, but it was ours to shape. Life after the divorce felt like stepping out of a long, dark tunnel into the light. I had regained control not just of the house, now sold, but of my life. Lucas, unaware of the grown-up troubles, flourished in the love and stability I provided. My days were busy but fulfilling, focused on rebuilding our lives and running the coffee shop, my sanctuary. The shadow of Ryan and his parents lingered, casting a pall over my life. One day, as I was closing the shop, Ryan appeared, looking disheveled and desperate, a stark contrast to the composed man I had once known. "Amelia, please, I need to talk to you," he pleaded, his eyes searching mine for a glimmer of the compassion we once shared. I hesitated, torn by conflicting emotions. "What do you want, Ryan?" "It's about the alimony and child support," he began, his voice filled with embarrassment. "I can't afford it. I lost my job because of the scandal. And my parents? They're struggling too." His words hit me like a cold shock. "That's not my problem, Ryan. You made your choices and now you have to face the consequences." "But Amelia, I have nothing left. Please, for old time's sake," he begged, his voice breaking with despair. I felt a pang of pity, but it was quickly overtaken by the memory of his betrayal. Old time's sake. Those times are gone, Ryan. You should have thought about the consequences before you cheated and lied. I turned to leave, but his next words stopped me in my tracks. "I'm sorry, Amelia. Truly, I am. I was a fool and I ruined everything. Please help me." For a moment, I glimpsed the man I once loved, vulnerable and regretful. But the pain he had caused was too deep, the betrayal too raw. "I'm sorry, Ryan, but I can't help you. You need to figure this out on your own, I said firmly, closing the chapter of our shared past for good. As I walked away, leaving Ryan standing alone, I felt a sense of closure. The journey had been painful, filled with betrayal and heartache, but it had led me to a place of strength and independence. Life moved on. Lucas grew, his laughter and curiosity bringing joy to our home. The coffee shop thrived, becoming a place of warmth and community. And as for me, I found contentment in simple pleasures. The aroma of fresh coffee, the sound of Lucas's giggles, and the support of loved ones. Ryan and his parents became distant memories, their legacy a reminder of the consequences of betrayal. My journey taught me resilience and the importance of standing up for oneself. As I locked the shop that evening, I looked up at the sky, its hues signaling the end of another day. I smiled, holding Lucas's hand tightly. Our future was uncertain, but it was bright. We were moving forward, step by step, into a new chapter of our lives. The noise of Alex's voice cut through the clinking of dishes like a sharp knife. "Alara, bring me some tea now." I paused, my hand in soapy water. "Wait, I'm doing the dishes." "What?" His voice was full of disbelief and impatience. "Stop that and bring me the tea quickly. Can't you follow simple orders?" "But," I started, but he cut me off. "What a useless wife you are. Make me some sweet coffee, please." It was Mrs. Whitmore, my mother-in-law, speaking from the living room. She was eating a slice of cake she'd taken from the fridge, her eyes glinting with spite. I sighed, looking at the pile of dishes. "There are so many. Leave them for later. Just do what we say, useless wife." Alex's words hit like a whip, each one stinging. I was Alara, a 28-year-old working mother feeling trapped in a life that felt more like a prison than a home. I got married at 23, hoping for love and companionship. Instead, I found myself stuck with Alex and his demanding mother. Our 4-year-old son was my only source of joy in a bleak world. We lived in Alex's parents' house, a decision I had to accept under the pretense of taking care of Mrs. Whitmore after my father-in-law passed away. At first, I felt sorry for her, thinking she was grieving, but soon I realized I was just a pawn in her cruel game of domestic control. No matter how much I cooked, cleaned, or worked, it was never enough. My efforts were always met with scorn. My meals were either left untouched or harshly criticized. "The stir-fry is so half-hearted," Mrs. Whitmore would sneer. "Cook it properly from scratch." "I'm busy and can only make simple things," I'd say, trying to sound calm. "That's why I hate backtalk from a daughter-in-law," she'd snap. "Cook from scratch." "Why don't you cook then? You're a good cook, right?" I dared to ask once, immediately regretting it. "Why would I do housework when you're here?" Her response was cold and dismissive. "Are you out of your mind?" Their cruelty got worse over time. They stopped talking to me altogether, as if I were a ghost in my own home. My presence, once just unappreciated, now felt completely invisible. 5 years passed in this suffocating atmosphere. Alex and I turned 35 and 33, respectively. Our son grew up, but the heavy atmosphere in the house didn't change. My mother-in-law, now 63, seemed to enjoy my unhappiness. One evening, as I walked home from work, I felt a heavy realization sink in. My life seemed meaningless. To them, I was like a shadow, unnoticed and ignored. The only person who seemed to see me was my son. The idea of losing even that little bit of recognition was too much to bear. When I got home, I started cooking right away, trying to push away the sadness. I made mapo tofu, fried chicken, and a stir-fry with bell peppers and pork, hoping to make our dinner feel normal. "Bring me the mayo," Alex suddenly commanded, breaking his long silence. "Sure, here you are," I replied, handing him the mayonnaise. His first words to me in ages weren't thankful or conversational, just another command. It was too much, the final straw. I couldn't tolerate it anymore. The evening got worse when Mrs. Whitmore said, "Clean the toilet." "What? Right now?" I couldn't believe it. "Yes, right now," she insisted, her voice full of bitterness. I couldn't hold back my frustration. "Don't say such things while we're eating. It's disgusting, just like your heart," she hissed, and our argument quickly escalated, with Alex joining in, demanding. I apologized to his mother, but stood my ground for the first time in years. The conflict reached its peak, and I made a decision. I needed to get out of this toxic situation, for my son's sake as well as my own. I went to my room determined. I downloaded divorce papers, filled them out, and handed them to Alex. He was shocked, but I felt nothing but determination. "I'm filing these," I said firmly. As I faced my husband's surprised expression, I realized I had finally stepped out of the shadows. It was time to take control of my life. In the days after I declared my intention to divorce, there were a lot of angry looks and hurtful words, but in the middle of it all, I felt a strange sense of freedom. One evening, as I served dinner, Mrs. Whitmore looked at the meal with disgust. "You call this food? Even a child cooks better." I held back my frustration, focusing on my son's smile. "Eat up, sweetheart. I made your favorite tonight." Alex jumped in, sarcastic. "Oh, now suddenly you're the perfect mother, huh? What a joke." I could feel anger rising, but I stayed calm. "I'm just trying to make a nice dinner for our son." Mrs. Whitmore scoffed. "Don't act like you're better than us. You're just a nuisance in this house." The tension at the table was thick. Alex's insults kept coming. "So, Alara, have you even thought about how you'll manage after the divorce? You can barely handle running a household, let alone your own life." I looked him in the eye. "I've been supporting this family for years. I'm not worried about taking care of myself and our son." His smirk faded slightly, a hint of unease crossing his face. Mrs. Whitmore quickly stepped in. "Don't be ridiculous. You rely on us more than we rely on you." The conversation shifted to money, a topic they usually avoided. "You know, without my paycheck, this household would struggle," I said, more to myself than to them. Mrs. Whitmore scoffed. "We'll manage. We don't need your charity." But Alex's silence said it all. He knew the truth. Without my income, they would be in trouble. In the following days, their behavior became more unpredictable. Mrs. Whitmore would switch between trying to persuade me to stay and hurling insults when I resisted. Alex, meanwhile, seemed lost, his confident demeanor fading as the reality of his financial reliance on me sank in. One afternoon, I overheard a conversation between them that sent shivers down my spine. "Leaving her is not an option," Alex whispered angrily. "We rely on her money." Mrs. Whitmore's response was chillingly calculated. "Don't fret, I have a plan. We'll make her life so miserable she won't even think about leaving." Hearing their true intentions shocked me. They didn't care about me or our son. It was all about control and money. That night, lying in bed, a plan began to form. If they wanted a fight, they would get one, but not with arguments. I would hit them where it hurt most, their pride and their wallets. The next morning, I set my plan in motion. I contacted a lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman. "I want a divorce, and I want to ensure they don't get more than they deserve," I told her. She nodded firmly. "We'll make sure of that. You've been the main provider, right? We'll use that." With each passing day, my determination only grew stronger. I started keeping records of everything, the insults, the financial tricks, even the smallest annoyances. It was time to make them face the music. They needed to see the consequences of their actions. As I gathered evidence, I felt a sense of strength. For the first time in years, I felt like I had control over my life. The shadows of disrespect were fading away, and in their place, a new beginning was emerging. As the divorce process started, the tension at home grew worse. But with each passing day, my fear faded, replaced by determination. One evening, Mrs. Whitmore tried a different approach. "Alara dear, why don't we forget all this unpleasantness? You know we're family," she said, but her words were dripping with insincerity. I held her gaze steady. "Family doesn't treat each other the way you've treated me." Alex, who had been silent, scoffed. "Oh, now you're the victim. You're not as innocent as you act." I felt anger rising, but I stayed calm. "I'm not pretending anything, Alex. I'm just not willing to be your punching bag anymore." The conversation shifted to money, as it often did. "You think you can just take our son and go? How will you support him?" Alex challenged. I smiled confidently. "I've been supporting this family for years. I'll manage." Mrs. Whitmore's sneer twisted into her face. "You're nothing without us. You'll come begging to return." But their words didn't affect me anymore. I knew my value and the truth. The next day, I met with my lawyer again. She outlined the plan clearly. "We'll expose their financial dependence on you. It'll be crucial in the custody battle and dividing assets." I nodded, feeling validated. The law was backing me, and I was ready to stand up for myself. At home, the tension reached its peak. Mrs. Whitmore's attempts to undermine me became more desperate. "You think you're clever," she spat one evening, "but you're just abandoning your family." I looked her straight in the eye. "No, I'm finally standing up for myself." Alex joined in, his voice full of anger. "You'll regret this. You can't survive without me." But I wasn't afraid of his threats anymore. As days passed, I prepared for the court battle. I gathered financial documents, recorded their hurtful words, and collected evidence of their neglect. One afternoon, as I sorted through my papers, my son came to me. "Mom, are we going to be okay?" His voice was small and uncertain. I pulled him close, feeling a surge of protectiveness. "Yes, sweetheart, we're going to be just fine. We're leaving this place and starting a new happy life. Just you and me." His arms tightened around me, and in that moment, I knew I was doing the right thing. I was fighting for my son's future, not just for myself. The day of the court hearing approached, bringing a sense of impending freedom. I was ready to confront Alex and Mrs. Whitmore, to put an end to their control and abuse. I was ready to take back my life and give my son the peace and happiness he deserved. It was time for justice, and I was determined to see it through. The day of the court hearing arrived, a day I had been dreading yet eagerly awaiting. Sitting across from Alex and Mrs. Whitmore in the courtroom, I felt a surreal mix of emotions. This was the moment of change. The proceedings began formally. Alex's lawyer painted him as a devoted husband and father, unfairly accused. Mrs. Whitmore portrayed herself as a grieving mother-in-law, mistreated by an ungrateful daughter-in-law. But their act was transparent, their lies obvious. When it was my turn to speak, I spoke clearly, my voice steady. "I have been the only one working to support this family for years. My husband's unemployment and his mother's manipulation have caused constant strain." Alex interrupted, pretending to be hurt. "Alara, how can you say these things?" I turned to him, my gaze firm. "Support isn't just words, Alex. It's about actions, and your actions have been selfish and cruel." The judge listened as I presented my evidence. Financial documents, recordings of their verbal abuse, testimonies from neighbors who had witnessed their behavior. The truth was clear. As the evidence piled up, Alex's facade crumbled. Mrs. Whitmore's calm demeanor cracked, revealing her true nature. The courtroom fell silent, tension thick in the air. Then came the bombshell that sealed their fate. My lawyer presented evidence, photographs and documents proving Alex's infidelity and Mrs. Whitmore's affair with a neighbor, Mr. Harwood. The courtroom buzzed as the images were shown, revealing their deceit for all to see. Alex paled, his eyes wide with shock. Mrs. Whitmore's anger twisted her expression, her hands shaking. "You violated our privacy," she shrieked, her voice piercing. I met her gaze calmly. "No, I exposed the truth, a truth you both tried to hide for too long." The judge called for order, but the damage was done. Their credibility crumbled, their lies laid bare. As the hearing ended, the judge's decision was clear. I was granted full custody of our son, and assets were divided fairly. Alex and Mrs. Whitmore were left with nothing but their ruined reputations. Walking out of the courtroom, I felt like a burden had been lifted. The years of manipulation and abuse were finally behind me. I had stood up to them and won. But the best moment was when my son ran into my arms outside, his face beaming with relief. "We did it, Mom," he said happily. "Yes, we did," I replied, hugging him tightly. "We're free now. This is just the beginning for us." As we walked away together, I knew this victory wasn't just for me. It was for anyone who's ever felt small or powerless. It was for truth and fairness. It was the start of a new chapter, one filled with hope and a better future. The aftermath of the court ruling was swift and chaotic. News of Alex and Mrs. Whitmore's deceit spread quickly, staining their reputations in our small community. They could no longer hide behind their facade of respectability. In the days after the verdict, I focused on rebuilding my life with my son, but I couldn't ignore the satisfaction of knowing they were facing the consequences. One evening, while preparing dinner, I had an unexpected visitor, Mrs. Harwood, Mr. Harwood's wife, her eyes filled with tears. "Alara, I heard everything. I can't believe what Sylvia, Mrs. Whitmore, did," she said, her voice trembling with pain. I invited her in, offering a cup of tea. As we sat at the kitchen table, she poured out her heartache. I trusted her as a neighbor, as a friend, and to think she was having an affair with my husband. I listened, offering comfort. It was clear Mrs. Whitmore's actions had caused more damage than she anticipated. The next day, I ran into Alex in town. He looked defeated, a shadow of his former self, his arrogance gone. I paused, facing him. What's left to say, Alex? He shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my gaze. I'm sorry for everything. I didn't realize how much I relied on you, on your strength. His apology, though belated, marked a shift in power. He had lost everything. His pride, his home, his family. And in that loss, he finally acknowledged his mistakes. But it was Mrs. Whitmore who faced the harshest consequences. Her affair with Mr. Harwood had not only tarnished her reputation, but also led to legal troubles. Mrs. Harwood had filed for divorce and was suing her for alienation of affection. I heard about Mrs. Whitmore's downfall through whispers and rumors from neighbors, painting a picture of a woman brought down by her own actions. She became an outcast, rejected by those she once called friends. One afternoon, I spotted her at the grocery store, her demeanor defeated as she hurried through the aisles. Our paths crossed, and our eyes met briefly. The resentment and defeat in her gaze were clear. You did this to me, she muttered as she passed by. I watched her go, feeling a mix of pity and vindication. No, Sylvia, you did this to yourself, I whispered to myself. The tables had turned, and the consequences of their choices were now unavoidable. Alex and Mrs. Whitmore were facing the consequences of their years of deceit and manipulation. As I saw them struggle, I understood that the greatest revenge was living well, free from their toxicity. Refocusing on my son and our new life, I realized this wasn't just about revenge. It was about freedom, breaking away from abuse and control. Looking ahead, I knew the best was yet to come. My name is Amelia. I didn't grow up rich, but I still managed to get a job and get married. My husband's name is Edward, and he works at a fancy hotel. I thought my life would be a fairy tale, but things didn't turn out that way. My childhood home wasn't wealthy. We didn't have a lot of money, but I don't blame my parents at all. They gave up nice things for me, took me to fun places, and taught me about different cultures. Maybe they loved geography, but as a kid, I often thought they were trying too hard for me. I didn't want my parents to worry about me anymore, so I decided to start working right after middle school. My mom would say, "You should at least finish high school. It might be hard to find a job without it." And my dad would agree, "Yes, we have enough money saved to send you to high school." I was really happy about how my parents felt, but more than that, I really wanted to make life easier for them as soon as possible. It's okay. The sooner I start working, the sooner I'll start earning more, I said, not very sure of myself. But like my parents said, there was no guarantee I would find a job. During that time, I had a friend named Jessica who had moved here from another country when we started middle school. Her family wasn't rich either, which might be why we got along so well and always hung out together. Jessica could speak some English, so we managed to communicate. Without realizing it, I started learning Spanish by talking with her. By the time I was in 9th grade, I could speak Spanish pretty well. Maybe it was my Spanish skills that helped because, surprisingly, a travel agency decided to hire me. They saw value in my ability to speak Spanish. Jessica and I, having both left school after middle school, started working and gradually lost touch. I focused on my job, determined to earn money. Time passed quickly, and soon I was 26 years old. I often used a lounge in a hotel for work. It was a fancy but cozy place, and the snacks and coffee were reasonably priced. We had our meetings there with the staff. The waiter working there at the time was Edward. The hotel hosted many foreigners, so he spoke Spanish too. Sometimes I would be there with foreign guests. Maybe because we both spoke Spanish, we connected right away. Edward started a conversation, and before I knew it, we were in a whirlwind romance that led to marriage. For a girl from a poor family, getting married was a big deal. I expected to start an exciting new life. However, reality was quite different. When we were getting married, Edward had a request. "If it's okay with you, Amelia, I'd like us to live at my family home." His father had passed away a few years ago, and he was worried about his mother living alone. Her energy levels were dropping, and having someone around to help her seemed like a good idea. Since I worked remotely, Edward thought it would be convenient for me to stay home, look after his mother, and handle the household chores. On the flip side, Edward often worked long hours and wasn't home much. With his rare days off, having me, a home-based worker, around must have seemed like a good arrangement to him. but I couldn't agree to it right away. When I first visited Edward's family home to introduce myself before our marriage, his mother reacted strangely after asking about my education. "Amelia, which university did you graduate from?" she asked. When I honestly replied, "Well, I didn't go to college. I only finished middle school," my mother-in-law went silent and just looked at me. Her expression showed she looked down on me. "Oh, middle school, well, she said, eyeing me with disdain. Because of this, I thought living with her might not be easy, so I mentioned my concerns to Edward casually. "Edward, do you think your mom has some doubts about me?" I asked him. He chuckled a bit and replied, "Nah, that's not true. Mom trusts me, and I'm sure she doesn't have any bad feelings toward my wife either." His words made me think maybe I was worrying too much. Edward also promised that if any issues arose, he would talk to his mother for me. With that reassurance, I agreed to move in with his family. But once I started living there, things weren't as smooth as I'd hoped. It was a harsh reality check. Whenever Edward and I visited his family's house, his mother would speak to him with such warmth. "Edward, thank you. I'm so grateful you're living with me," she would say, and Edward would respond, "Of course, I knew it would help you out." They seemed like such a close mother and son. But towards me, my mother-in-law's attitude was completely different, cold even. "Well, Amelia, just make sure you don't hold Edward back," she'd say emotionlessly, as if she was giving orders to a servant. It was clear she still looked down on me, but at that moment, Edward stood up for me. "Don't worry. Amelia is doing a great job working too," he said. However, when I mentioned this, my mother-in-law briefly looked stern, a detail I didn't miss. I figured I should talk to Edward if things ever got troublesome and decided to handle it my way. We were family after all, and I didn't want any tension between us. That's how we started living together, but reality didn't bend in a favorable direction. Once, as I was working on my computer as usual, my mother-in-law burst into my room and said angrily, "Hey, Amelia, when are you going to clean my room? It needs to be done by 10 a.m. every day." I was surprised because I had never heard of such a rule before. Sure, I agreed to do household chores, but we never discussed to what extent. If she had just told me kindly from the beginning, that would have been fine. After all, I have my own job and can't be available all the time. However, arguing wouldn't be mature, so I quickly finished my work, apologized, and started cleaning her room. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law was just relaxing in the living room, watching TV and eating snacks. Edward had mentioned concerns about his mother's health, but she seemed well enough to clean her own room. I had imagined she might have difficulty walking, but she was more lively than I thought. Once the cleaning was done, she immediately ordered, "Now start making dinner. And I like it plain. I won't tolerate anything too strong." She even told me to go shopping for ingredients right away. I thought it was too early to start cooking, but I decided to get it done and return to my work. When I got back from shopping, my mother-in-law was surprisingly still relaxing. It was hard not to feel annoyed, but I chose to hold back and just finish what needed to be done. I thought maybe she was testing me, hoping she'd understand in time, but that hope lingered for months. There were days when she complained about me being just 5 minutes late with the laundry or that the bathtub wasn't cleaned perfectly, nitpicking to an almost obsessive degree. Before I knew it, I ended up doing all the chores around the house, while my mother-in-law just lounged around. Honestly, if she had the energy to nitpick, she could very well do some chores herself. I started to worry that if this continued, it would start affecting my job too. That was the last thing I needed, so I decided to wait until the evening to talk to Edward about it. Once my mother-in-law had gone to bed, I told him everything. "Hey, I think your mom just doesn't like me. I'm getting so tired of being constantly criticized." But Edward just chuckled and said, "Come on, that can't be true. Mom's a kind person. There won't be any issues as long as Amelia doesn't do anything strange. Please try to get along with her." He didn't believe me. Maybe it's because she's always doting on him and never complains to him. In fact, when Edward's around, my mother-in-law says, "Amelia, why don't you take a break and have some tea?" But even knowing that, there's a limit to my patience with this kind of life. I spend all day doing household chores and end up having to work on my job at night. To be honest, my trust in Edward is starting to fade. If nothing changes, I might just collapse from all the stress. Then, in the midst of all this, my mother-in-law dropped a bombshell. "Amelia, I'll be away for about a week in about 3 months from now, so make sure you keep the house in order, okay? She sprang this on me out of nowhere. When I asked what was going on, she said, Edward suggested we go on an overseas vacation. That's my boy, always knowing. I was thrilled at the thought of traveling abroad. I couldn't wait, but when my mother-in-law dropped the bomb about the vacation, I was shocked. Edward hadn't mentioned a word of it to me, and it seemed like I was being left out, expected to stay behind and manage the house. I needed to talk to Edward about this right away, so I brought it up that night. His response was surprising. Oh, Mom already told you, but you're coming too, right? It turned out we had misunderstood each other. It seems my mother-in-law had lied to me. Even if Edward wants me to go, I can't possibly enjoy a trip with her. In frustration, I told him, I don't want to go. I can't possibly have a good time with your mother. Then Edward completely lost it and lashed out. Amelia, what the heck are you saying? How long are you going to keep up this childish nonsense? I won't allow you to speak ill of Mom like that. You better reflect on this. It's a vacation abroad for crying out loud, and I want to enjoy it too, he retorted. I was completely shocked. I couldn't believe Edward wouldn't trust me this much. Staying in that house had become nothing but agony for me. To prove to Edward that I was telling the truth, I decided to take action. The next day, since Edward was off work, the three of us had breakfast together. That's when I confronted my mother-in-law. You're trying to leave me out of the trip abroad, aren't you? My mother-in-law replied defiantly. Oh, did I say that, Amelia? If you want to come, just come along, right? But Edward interrupted. Hey, Amelia, don't you understand yet? Apologize to Mom. Why are you being so defiant? You're not a child anymore. Despite my desire to clear things up and make Edward understand, my mother-in-law insulted me in the worst way. Well, maybe Amelia should just stay home, right? It's too early for someone like you to travel abroad. You won't appreciate the experience with your lack of education. Besides, lazing around at home every day without working. Do you even deserve to go abroad? You know it, don't you? She said. I was shocked that she still believed I was unemployed. I've explained my job to you multiple times, even during our greetings. I've told you what I do, haven't I? I confronted her, but she just looked down on me. What job? Remote work. Don't joke with me. You're just playing on the computer at home. It's been getting on my nerves every day. There's no way you're making money with that. You're just stealing Edward's earnings, she blurted out. That really made me angry, but before I could respond, she went even further. I have Edward, and that's enough for me. Edward can speak Spanish and works at a renowned hotel. There's no need to waste his earnings on a woman like you, uneducated and unemployed. A bottom feeder like you should just leave as soon as possible, she continued. She just kept going. After all her harsh words, I looked at Edward, hoping he would understand, but his response was unexpected. Well, I can understand how Mom feels. Maybe Amelia needs to cool off a bit, he said nonchalantly, as if he was fed up with me. At that moment, I made a decision. I couldn't endure being treated like this by both the mother and son any longer. Even though my mother-in-law told me to leave, I still wanted to confirm. Am I really supposed to leave? I asked. Laughing, she replied. Of course, leave as soon as you can. We don't need bottom feeders like you around. So I said, understood, and began preparing to move out. I simply nodded to the two of them and left the house. As I was leaving, my mother-in-law called after me with a sneer. Enjoy your poor life, as it suits a bottom feeder like you. But they didn't realize that consequences would follow their actions. About 3 months after I left the house, around the time when they were scheduled to go on their trip abroad, my mother-in-law called me. Amelia, I finally reached you. What's going on? She sounded quite frantic. First, I replied, I'm surprised you managed to call this number. She said, Of course, I tried several times and couldn't get through. I even called your parents' house to get your new number. I had informed my parents that either Edward or my mother-in-law might call. If they did, they should call back at this number. What's wrong? I asked in a panicked tone. She said, What's wrong? We're getting all sorts of collection letters. Help me out. I didn't know about any of this. Well, that's expected. You haven't been paying the utilities, have you? I simply answered. My mother-in-law seemed lost in her thoughts. I absolutely thought Edward was covering our living expenses. To find out you were paying for everything, why didn't you tell me? I had no idea you were making that much money. It's a bit late to bring this up now. I said, though perhaps Edward finally told her the truth. That's right. I had already started my own business using the expertise I gained from the travel agency. I used to work for a travel agency, and now my own business had grown to the point of earning $20 million, being widely accepted around the world. What shocked my mother-in-law even more was probably Edward's income. Just because he worked in a lounge at a well-known hotel didn't mean he was making a lot of money. If anything, Edward was just an average worker on the lower end of the pay scale. And speaking Spanish at that hotel was nothing special. There were many Spanish speakers there. Even if he could speak it, it wasn't anything remarkable. There's no way his income could cover the living expenses for 3 people. In reality, just making ends meet for himself was all he could manage. It's ridiculous that she hadn't realized until a collection notice came that I was the one paying all the living expenses for my husband's family. But the more I listened to my mother-in-law, the more shocking facts came to light. The reason why she insisted on me living with them wasn't to keep an eye on her. It was because she had been living off my father-in-law's wealth. Blinded by a temporary influx of cash, she had spent lavishly until there was nothing left. That's when she turned to Edward, presuming he was earning well. But Edward knew his income was low, and he was somewhat aware of my earnings, which is why he turned to me for help. Hearing this only confirmed how irresponsible they were. But their irresponsibility didn't stop there. By the way, are you managing to make the car payments? My mother-in-law exclaimed, raising her voice. Exactly. Both Edward and I have bills piling up since you moved out. I've been receiving more and more credit card statements addressed to both of us. The amounts due each month kept increasing, and before I knew it, they amounted to quite a sum. Their level of luxury spending was beyond me. I have no idea how they were spending without paying the living expenses, but Edward's bills had surpassed his salary, and my mother-in-law hadn't stopped her old habits of lavish spending. It seemed they had both gotten themselves into debt, now totaling over $440,000. What's even more shocking is they thought Edward would somehow manage it if it was just a bit of debt, as my mother-in-law put it, and Edward thought I would take care of it if things got tough. The level of dependency in grown adults was appalling. Beyond exasperation, I was starting to feel the danger. So when my mother-in-law brazenly said, "So, Amelia, you can sort this out for us, right?" I was astonished by her audacity. I made it clear to her, after everything that's happened, you're asking for help now. There's no way I'm helping. That's when Edward suddenly took the phone. "Hey, Amelia, you're my wife. You have a duty to help us out. Do something. We can't pay this off." I couldn't believe their nerve, but I did offer him a glimmer of mercy. "So you want to come over? I might consider it if you do." He was immediately enthusiastic. "Oh yeah, you'll let us stay and you'll sort out the money. Then let's do that. Where's your place?" "I'll head there right now," he said eagerly. I had to be honest. "Well, if you can make it. I'm in Hawaii right now. I have a vacation home here," I said. Both Edward and my mother-in-law couldn't hide their shock. "What do you mean, Hawaii? We can't afford to go there right now." Edward panicked. I calmly replied, "Weren't you planning to travel abroad? Just swing by Hawaii. Your mother would love it. And you did ask my family for my phone number, right? Didn't you realize it was an international number?" I added, "Oh, and don't forget the cost of this call. It adds up if you're on for a long time." To make my point clear, I said if we get divorced, I might think about helping with the money too. Edward quickly replied, "All right, I got it. Let's just get divorced first then." It seems like Edward realized his debts were something he couldn't trade for anything else. So I told him I'd deliver the divorce papers once I got back to California and ended the call. About a week later, I returned to California, made sure to have the divorce papers properly written up, and the divorce went through without a hitch. Edward looked quite worn out, so I guess he's been living pretty lean these last few days. He mentioned something at that time. It turns out he had been counting on my money for the overseas trip as well. Hearing that didn't even surprise me anymore. They probably thought I would pay off their debts, but of course I had no intention whatsoever of doing that. What I proposed was, first of all, for both of them to stop living so extravagantly, and then for Edward and my mother-in-law to work hard. I told them if they did, they could eventually pay off the debt and at least manage the basics. When Edward heard this, he lashed out. "Hey, that's not what you promised. You were supposed to think about the debt." But I was like, That's why I did you a favor by thinking of a way for you guys to handle your debt repayment. So good luck. Once you can afford to travel abroad again, I'll invite you to my Hawaii villa, I said with a touch of sarcasm and left their place. Afterward, they both seemed to be working themselves to the bone from dawn till dusk, barely scraping by. It's probably a good lesson for them since they've had it easy until now. On a different note, I heard that Jessica also built a house in Hawaii. I had a reunion with her after so long. She took up a job that took her around the world after graduating from middle school and now seems to be a company president just like me. She had her parents come over to the house she bought, and they are living it up together. So I called my parents over from California, and we started living here. Now, I sometimes visit Jessica's place. We both feel blessed to be able to give back to our parents and encourage each other as we work hard at our jobs. Hey, I'm Clara, and I want to tell you about a funny thing my husband's family tried to do. Tyler and I have been together for a long time. We met in college and instantly became best friends. His happy laugh and kind heart made me fall in love with him. We had a great relationship filled with dreams and memories, but Tyler's family had a weird tradition of playing jokes on each other. At first, I thought it was fun, but their jokes were mean and hurtful, not just harmless fun. Instead of making people laugh, they often made them feel embarrassed. I felt uneasy seeing how Tyler's family hurt each other with their unkind jokes. I didn't want to be the target of their mean humor. The first time I met them, they played a really embarrassing prank on me. Tyler's family had picnics every few months where everyone got together. Tyler thought it would be a good time for me to meet them. I was nervous but excited because I really wanted them to like me. At first, everything seemed fun. But then Tyler's dad, Kenneth, pretended to spill his drink on me. It looked like an accident, but it made a mess, so I had to change my clothes. Tyler's mom, Sharon, offered me clothes from their car. But when I opened the bag she gave me, instead of regular clothes, there was a big clown costume inside. I couldn't believe it. They planned to embarrass me all along. I felt shocked, hurt, and really embarrassed. I couldn't imagine walking around in a clown costume. How could they do something so mean just for a laugh? I reluctantly put on the big clown costume, feeling really exposed and embarrassed. As I walked back to where the picnic was, Tyler's family started laughing loudly. Their laughter made me feel even worse, especially with other people in the park staring and whispering. It was tough to handle their teasing, especially because I had hoped they would like me. Instead, they seemed to enjoy making fun of me. I felt really sad and angry, wondering why they would want to hurt me like that. It was so embarrassing, and I felt really foolish. I felt a mix of emotions, from shock to embarrassment to anger. Tyler saw how upset I was and got really mad at his family. What were you thinking? How could you do this to Clara? I specifically told you not to play pranks on her until she's comfortable with it. Oh, come on, Tyler, it was just a joke. We didn't mean any harm. This is just how we are. Harm? Look at her, she's embarrassed. I know we're okay with these pranks, but she's not, and you should have respected that. It's the one thing I asked of you. Tyler, relax. It was just a harmless costume. We didn't mean to upset her so much. Just a silly costume? Don't you see how much she's hurting? Mom, you know how much Clara means to me. I won't stand for this. Tyler, we didn't think it would upset her so much. We're sorry. Sorry isn't good enough. You broke your promise. If this happens again, I'm serious, I'll cut ties with both of you. I won't let anyone treat Clara like this. Tyler, please, we didn't mean to hurt her. We'll make sure it never happens again. I hope you mean it. I won't tolerate anyone disrespecting the person I love. I expect better from both of you. After the incident, Tyler apologized to me profusely for his family's actions. It was a big moment for us and showed me that our relationship was more important than their strange jokes. His kindness and understanding really helped me feel better. Sadly, that incident made things difficult with my in-laws. Kenneth and Sharon, my mother and father-in-law, kept making little mean comments about me, calling me names like wasp or party pooper. At first, it really hurt, but I learned to ignore them and focus on my relationship with Tyler. A few months later, Tyler proposed to me and we decided to get married. The wedding was amazing and we were both so happy to start our life together. Tyler's parents, Kenneth and Sharon, surprised us with an invitation to dinner at one of my favorite fancy restaurants. They said it was to welcome me into their family. At first, I wasn't sure if I should go. Kenneth noticed I was unsure and texted me an apology for how they treated me before. He promised the dinner was a way to show they accepted me. I reluctantly agreed to go, but I still felt like something wasn't right. I knew them well enough to suspect they had other reasons for inviting me. Luckily, I had a plan. The restaurant they picked was owned by my friend Connor. Connor and I shared a special bond that was more than just friendship. He was like a brother to me, always there when I needed him. We grew up together in the same town and became best friends in high school. Even though we lost touch during college, we reconnected a couple of years ago. Our friendship grew stronger, and I was overjoyed to see him get married. Connor was someone I could always count on. He was kind and caring, making me feel safe and understood. We laughed together, comforted each other, and celebrated together. Connor supported me through thick and thin, offering advice and a listening ear. He became a big part of my life, even making me the godmother to his first child. He wasn't just a friend, he was like family to me. Hey Connor, can we talk? Of course, what's on your mind? It's about my in-laws. You remember them, right? Yeah, I met them before. What's going on? Well, they're planning a party for me at your restaurant, but here's the thing. They love playing humiliating pranks on people. The first time I met them, they embarrassed me big time. Really? That's not cool at all. I'm sorry you had to go through that. Thanks, it was awful. But since then, Tyler threatened them, and they haven't tried anything on me again. But I'm worried they might pull something at this party. Don't worry, I've got your back. If they try anything funny, I'll be ready with a backup plan to save you from any embarrassment. Wow, thanks a bunch. I knew I could rely on you. Having someone support me like this really means a lot. Absolutely, you're like family to us. We won't let anyone make you feel bad. Just believe in me and we'll make sure you have a blast at the party. I'm really grateful for that. You're awesome. Haha, make sure to remind my kids that I'm awesome when they're older. Oh, stop it. I need some time to decide. After talking with Connor, I suddenly felt much better. I started to look forward to the party instead of dreading it. Connor's help made me feel more confident, like I had someone on my side. A few days before the party, I called Sharon to make sure everything was set for our reservation at the restaurant. Hi Sharon, I just wanted to chat about the party at the restaurant. I wanted to remind you how important it is to have the reservations right. Don't worry, Clara. I've got it all under control. You don't need to stress about it. I understand you're busy getting ready for the party, but the restaurant has rules we need to follow, and I want to ensure everything goes smoothly. Are you suggesting I can't handle it? I've planned many events before, you know. No, that's not what I meant at all. I just want to prevent any problems and ensure everything goes perfectly. Believe me, Clara, I've sorted out the reservations and everything will be fine. You can trust me. I felt both relieved and a bit worried. Even though Sharon said everything was fine, I couldn't shake off my doubts. I really hoped she had handled the reservations well and that the party would go smoothly. On the day of the party, Tyler and I walked into the restaurant. The receptionist greeted us warmly. We were familiar faces here because we visited Connor's restaurant often. A waiter led us to our table. But when we got there, something seemed wrong. There was a seat missing. Panic rushed through me as I asked about my seat, but Tyler's family burst into laughter instead of answering. Tyler, clearly angry with his family, confronted them. I can't believe you guys. This is totally uncalled for. You're aware of the restaurant's rules, yet you intentionally pulled that prank. It's not funny when it hurts someone. Oh, come on, Tyler. Don't be so serious. It was just a harmless joke. No, Dad, it wasn't harmless. It's embarrassing and not okay. You promised you wouldn't do anything like this again. Well, maybe now it'll be a real family dinner. I don't see why we have to include someone who can't take a joke in our family. Mom, that's not fair. Clara is my wife, and I won't tolerate anyone disrespecting her. How are you going to make this right? I couldn't believe they were brushing off my feelings so easily, calling it just a joke. It hurt to think they didn't understand how their actions affected me and didn't fully support our relationship. I really wanted them to understand and accept us, but their words just made me feel more hurt and let down. Right when things were getting tense, Connor walked in. Oh, look who's here. Hey, Clara, it's so good to see you. How have you been? Oh my goodness, hi Connor. It's been a while. I'm doing all right, thank you. Tyler's family organized a party for me to welcome me into their family. That's fantastic. By the way, everyone, I'm Connor, the owner of this place. Let's kick off this celebration. Wait a minute, though there seems to be a seat missing at this table. What's going on? Oh, that's their little prank on me. They like playing jokes. I know you're strict about seating, but is there any chance you could make an exception for me? Sorry, Clara, I can't do that. If I made an exception for you, I'd have to do it for everyone. But don't worry, I've got a solution. We have an empty seat in our VIP lounge. How about you and Tyler spend the evening there? You'll have a great view and a comfy spot. Why does she get special treatment? This was meant to be a joke. There's no need for all this fuss. Well, it's important to ensure our guests feel welcome and valued, and I believe it's crucial to respect everyone's feelings. Anyway, Clara, your meal and all your drinks tonight are on the house. Enjoy your evening. Thank you so much, Connor. In that moment, my appreciation for Connor was boundless. Having him there brought a sense of peace and security. He led us to the VIP area, shielding us from the chaos caused by Tyler's family. They protested loudly, but Connor made sure we received special treatment. He simply signaled to one of the wait staff to take care of their table, and they quieted down immediately. I thanked Connor profusely for standing up for me and preventing me from feeling even more embarrassed. Tyler's support meant the world to me. His actions truly revealed his character and his commitment to keeping me safe. Despite his family's teasing, he stood by me, prioritizing our well-being above all else. It demonstrated the depth of his love and the strength of our bond. Sitting in the VIP area surrounded by security and support, I felt immensely grateful for both Connor and Tyler. Their unwavering presence reassured me that I wasn't facing this journey alone. As Tyler and I ordered our meal and drinks, we started to relax and enjoy the evening. However, the night had more surprises in store for us. Hey guys, where would you like us to sit? We're all here for Clara's party, right? I don't think that's a good idea. We're good on our own. Well, what if we apologize? We're family and family shouldn't treat each other like this. Yeah, we want to make things right. Can't we all just move on from this? Are you serious? You didn't want her in the family before, and now suddenly you do. Or is it because you want to sit in a fancier place and get a free meal? You guys are a joke. Leave us alone. Tyler, we're really sorry. We didn't mean it like that. We were just messing around. Messing around? It didn't feel like a joke when you embarrassed me. Your actions spoke louder than words. Enough. We don't want to hear it. Just go. Tyler, please no. Mom, it's time you both understand the consequences of your actions. Leave now. Connor, sensing the tension, stepped in and politely asked Kenneth and Sharon to leave our table. When they refused, he warned them of involving the authorities. Finally, they begrudgingly walked back to their table. However, Connor followed them and requested them to leave his restaurant, citing complaints from other customers about their disruptive behavior. With no other choice, they left, their heads hung low in embarrassment as everyone in the restaurant witnessed their humiliating departure. That night, Tyler and I had a wonderful time. We laughed, ate, and enjoyed drinks with Connor, celebrating our victory over Tyler's family's failed prank. After that night, Tyler's family bombarded us with angry texts, blaming us for overreacting and causing a scene. Their words hurt, worsening the strain between us. It felt like the aftermath of a storm, with no calm in sight. Instead of engaging with their negativity, we decided to take a stand. We realized we didn't need their toxicity in our lives, so we blocked them, putting an end to their hurtful words and actions. Cutting ties with Tyler's family was necessary for our emotional well-being. We refused to subject ourselves to their constant ridicule and cruelty. It was a freeing choice that allowed us to focus on our love and supportive relationships. Life went on, and Tyler and I flourished in our love and unity. Our bond grew stronger, and we created our own loving family free from his parents' toxicity. Thanks for sticking with me through this roller coaster story. Remember, the sweetest victories often come from unexpected allies. Don't let anyone's cruel pranks dampen your spirit. Stay true to yourself, and you'll always come out on top. Hey everyone, I'm Sandra, and I'm 28 years old. I live in Houston, Texas, but I'm getting ready to move soon. I was in a really bad marriage for a year and a half, but I got out of it with the help of my dad and the police. It was my fault though. I got myself into that mess. If I had been smarter, I might have said no to getting married. I've always been a shy and quiet girl. I didn't really enjoy hanging out with people. Most of the time, I just stay on my computer, lost in the online world. Sometimes I'd go to pubs for a drink, but I'd get uncomfortable when strangers tried to befriend me. I'd always turn them down because they were strangers, and I worried they might try to harm me. When I was 6, my mom passed away because she had a heart problem that wasn't treated. After that, my dad took care of me. He's been a sailor since he was 23, going on long trips exploring the sea. I really missed him when he was away. He used to send letters to my mom and try calling her whenever he could. But when my mom died, he came back to be with me. He found me crying a lot next to her coffin. He picked me up and tried to comfort me. "Hey, my little girl, did you miss me? You've grown so much." "Papa." "Hey there, Dove, it's okay now. Daddy's here. Everything will be okay. I promise. All right." Even though he said that, I kept crying in his arms, holding onto his uniform tightly. My dad gently patted my back and hummed my favorite lullaby until I fell asleep. Later that night, I saw him sitting alone on the couch, drinking. He looked really sad. He kept saying things to himself, then buried his face in a cushion and started crying. It was the second time I'd ever seen him cry. The first was when I fell off a slide and got hurt. Maybe he blamed himself for everything that happened. He took a break from work for 2 months before leaving again. Before he left me with my grandma, who took care of me while he was away. "Be good to Granny, okay? She's here for you. You'll be a good girl and help her out. And you? I'll be back soon, my dove. I asked Granny to teach you how to bake your favorite treats and cook your favorite meals. Will you learn from her?" "Yes, Dad, I will. Next time I come back, I'd love to taste your dishes. But for now, I have to go. My car's waiting. You take care of yourself, honey." He left. I knew he'd be back in about 6 months. He often sent me gifts and little souvenirs from the places he visited. Most of the time, I stayed indoors and helped Grandma with her chores. I didn't really like playing with other kids. As I got older, I relied more and more on the comfort of my room. Eventually, my dad sent me back to our old house. I really disliked going to college and interacting with people. The internet gave me confidence that the outside world couldn't. It's exciting and comforting to talk to people I might never meet in person. I can share my thoughts and feelings without worrying about being judged for being shy. Through the screen, I found friends who truly get me. I've met people from all over the world with different backgrounds and experiences. Learning about their lives is fascinating, and it shows how alike we all are despite our differences. The internet connects us across continents, bringing us together in ways we couldn't have imagined before. There, I met a guy named Ricky. He said he was a streamer. We started chatting, then moved on to video calls. I often wore a Batman mask to hide my identity, and he covered his face with a scarf and wore a beanie. "Hi Sandra, it's great to finally see you." "Hello Rick, nice to meet you," while virtually. "Same here. So how are you feeling today? How many people have you chatted with?" "I'm okay, just a little nervous to be honest." "That's totally normal. But don't worry, I'm not scary. I'm just as awkward as you. This is our first real chat." "So Rick, tell me more about yourself. How did you get into this online platform?" "Well, I really enjoy meeting new people and seeing things from different angles. I tend to spend a lot of time at home, so this online community seemed like a great way to connect with others. How about you?" "I'm pretty much your typical introvert, so I struggle a bit with socializing in person. Online platforms give me a sense of ease and let me be more open." "I get it. Virtual connections can be surprisingly meaningful. I'm glad we found each other." We talked for a while, discovering shared interests and swapping stories about our lives. As the conversation flowed, I started feeling more relaxed. It's funny, I never expected to feel so comfortable talking to someone online. "Thanks for making it easy." "The feeling's mutual, Sandra. You're great to talk to, and I'm happy we connected. If you ever want to chat again, just give me a shout. I'm usually online playing Mario." "Oh, forgot to ask, do you play games?" "Actually, no, I mostly blog and browse Reddit. There's so much interesting stuff there. I feel like I learn more from other people's stories than from real-life examples." "Totally. Sometimes real life can be a drag. It's cool to meet new people. Like, look at me. I trust my online friends more than the ones I know in person." The best part about online stuff is you don't have to feel pressure to keep in touch. You can take it or leave it. It's up to you. As Ricky and I kept talking, we formed a real bond despite being strangers online. Our shared understanding and open-mindedness made us feel like friends beyond the screen. I'm not sure where this connection will take me, but one thing is for sure. My online experiences have shaped who I am. As I go through life, I'll always carry the lessons I've learned from my digital world with me. My dad, on the other hand, is very cautious. If he knew I was making friends online, he'd be really mad. Last time he talked to me, he sat me down and lectured me during dinner. How are your studies, Dove? I've graduated. Well, you wouldn't know. You weren't there. Oh, Sandra, that's not good. I know I was really busy, and I'm sorry for missing out. I even emailed you saying I'd be there for your birthday. Tomorrow's my pumpkin's birthday. Stop calling me names. I'm not a little kid anymore. To me, you'll always be my little Dove. Anyway, what are your plans for the future? Are you thinking of working? I'm not sure yet. What do you mean you're not sure? What are your friends up to these days? I don't have any friends. What? Listen, I didn't send you to your mom's place so you could just stay home and not interact with the world. There's so much out there, so many people you'll miss out on if you don't get out there, honey. That's the problem, Dad. I don't really know how, but I'll try. I mean, I do have friends, but they're all online. Online? Sandra, that's not the best way to make friends. Oh, come on. All right, fine. How about we go out today? Maybe do a little shopping, just you and me. I haven't been out much lately, but I don't know if I can. Of course you can, Sandra. You have to try. This isn't a healthy way to live. I understand ever since Marissa passed away, you've... Why are you bringing Mom into this? What are you trying to say? I'm not trying to say anything, honey. I'm just saying that we need to find ways to move forward from past hurts. We both love your mom, but we need to learn to move on. I don't know why, but I got really angry. I slammed the table and stood up. I didn't even want to finish my food. I took my plates to the sink. Sandra, please don't give your father that attitude. I was just trying to help you. Why can't you see that? You don't know everything about me, so don't try to. I was so angry. I went online to find Rick. At first, Ricky seemed like a nice person, understanding and willing to listen. It felt good to have someone to talk to, especially about the frustrations I've been dealing with. As an introvert, I always found comfort at home, with my computer screen as my companion. While others went out into the world, I preferred the safety of my virtual haven, where I could be myself without the pressure of face-to-face interactions. Lately, my dad had been pushing me more and more, especially since I told him how much time I spent online. I knew this would happen, he just didn't understand. He thought staying in my room all the time would hold me back from growing and learning. He wanted me to step out of my comfort zone, and that scared me. I vented my frustrations to Ricky, hoping he'd understand what I was going through. Hey Sandra, do you want to meet up? We're both introverts, so we can go somewhere quiet, with not too many people. I know a place like that. I'm not sure. It feels really sudden. I need some time to think. I just wanted to let you know what's been going on. Okay, no problem. I can wait. Whenever you're ready, you're always welcome to come by. Here's my address. Why are you being so nice to me? I'm just a stranger, aren't I? Because I like you. Like me, really? Yeah, I know it might sound strange, but I really want to get to know you. And if you ever feel the same, you know where to find me. It was a big step for me, stepping out into the real world. My heart was racing with excitement and nerves as I stood outside Rick's house, finally ready to meet the person I've been talking to online for the past month. Surprisingly, he lived really close to me, just a 20-minute drive or so. I took a deep breath, gathering my courage before knocking on the weathered wooden door. It creaked open, and there was Rick with a warm smile that instantly calmed my nerves. He was quite charming. His house might not have been fancy at first glance, but there was something cozy about it. It felt authentic and welcoming. As I stepped inside, I couldn't help but notice the small details that spoke volumes about Ricky's character. The bookshelves filled with well-loved classics, the stack of board games, his computer setup, and so on. Welcome, welcome to my humble abode. Your presence graces my domain, fair master. Some gaming talk I might not fully grasp, but thank you. This is a really cozy place. Do you live alone? Nope, fair princess. I live with my mom. She stays downstairs, while I have the top floor all to myself. Come, I'll give you a tour. We spent the day talking, laughing, and getting to know each other even better. Meeting in person added a new dimension to our connection, and I grew to appreciate the person behind the screen even more. Rick was just as kind and genuine as I had hoped, and his quirky sense of humor only made me like him more. As the sun set, Rick suggested we take a walk outside, and I agreed eagerly. As we strolled through the nearby park, our conversation flowed effortlessly, and my initial nervousness melted away. Being with him in person felt like a natural extension of our online chats, but with a deeper level of closeness. Wait, so you didn't celebrate your birthday? No, I didn't really feel like it, especially after the argument with my dad. I'm really sorry to hear that. I'm sure he'll come around. He's your dad after all. I made a mistake. I trusted him too much. His words seemed sweet like honey, but I didn't realize I was just another one of his games. When we started dating, he became overly possessive and jealous. He always wanted me to talk to him on the phone or online. If I tried to chat with anyone else, he'd get angry. He kept saying he loved me and wanted to protect me. I believed him. Why did I believe him? As our relationship got stronger, it became clear that his mom didn't approve of me. It was tough to know she felt that way about me, someone she hadn't even met. Her disapproval weighed on me, and I couldn't understand why she couldn't see the love we had. Rick's close relationship with his mom was obvious, and he often called himself a mama's boy. While I respected their bond, it also made me feel distant. I knew family was important to him, but I felt like an outsider dealing with his mom's disapproval. The strangest thing was that his mother kind of wanted us to get married. She knew I didn't have anyone else in the world since my dad wasn't around. Maybe she thought I'd be useful to her. Not every parent is perfect. Just look at your dad. At least my mom cares about me. Please, Rick, when you talk like that, it really hurts. But you know I'm the one who loves you, right? Your dad doesn't love you like I do. So stop complaining about my life and try to compromise. We ended up having a secret wedding. Ricky didn't want me to invite my dad, saying he'd never approve. He managed to make me believe that my dad didn't care about me. I went along with it and got married to him quietly. I knew it was risky, but I was weak. You can call me weak, but my environment shaped me, and I blamed myself for not standing up for myself. After a few months of being married, I began to see a side of his mother I never expected, one filled with cruelty and malice. She seemed to enjoy making me suffer, deliberately making me doubt myself and leaving me feeling shattered and defeated. It started with small comments and passive-aggressive remarks, slowly wearing down my confidence. I tried to ignore it, hoping her disapproval would go away over time. But instead, it only got worse, turning into a constant stream of emotional abuse. What is this? Is this supposed to be food? You think my son can eat this mess? Go and make it again, you idiot. Why is this place so dirty? Are you blind? What a sloppy girl. Get up, lazy girl. Take out the trash now. Honestly, have your parents taught you nothing? Her words were like daggers, leaving wounds that cut deep into my soul. She questioned every move I made, belittled my accomplishments, and manipulated situations to make me feel unworthy of Ricky's love. Meanwhile, my husband stayed in his room, lost in his music or video games. It felt like I was trapped in a never-ending nightmare, unable to escape her grip. Inside, I was filled with rage. I blamed myself for being so weak and stupid. How could I let myself be treated like this? I missed my dad terribly. I regretted our fights and pushing him away. I yelled at him to leave me alone, and with a heavy heart, he did a few days after my birthday. Now, I felt stuck and believed I deserved every bit of it. One day, feeling unwell and feverish, I curled up on the sofa, hoping a nap would help. Just as I was about to doze off, I was jolted awake by a sudden splash of cold water. It was Ally with a disgusted look on her face. What the hell are you doing sleeping on our couch? Did you get our groceries like I told you to? I didn't respond. I see. You want your old mother-in-law to do all the dirty work while you just lay around, you devil. She slapped me and started calling for Ricky. I couldn't take it anymore. I snapped. I'm not doing anything for you or your useless son. I've had enough of your. Go bother someone else. I can't and I won't take it anymore. I didn't receive an ounce of respect from this family, and I didn't care anymore. As I was about to leave, something blunt hit the back of my head, and I blacked out. When I regained consciousness, I found myself in a dimly lit room. My head throbbed with pain, and I struggled to stand up. Where was I? I could hear faint sounds approaching, growing louder as they neared. Crawling towards the noise, I found a metal door with a small window. It opened, revealing Ricky's grinning face. Is my wife scared of the dark? What is this, Ricky? Please let me out. This isn't funny. Shut up. This is what you get for disrespecting my mother. Now I'll make sure you never see the light of day again. Please, Ricky, I'm sorry. I'll do anything. I promise I won't complain. Please let me out, I beg you. Not so fast, Buttercup. If you behave, I might consider letting you out. For now, this will be your little hideout. It's not like you enjoy going out anyway. And who do you have? Your mom is gone. Your dad doesn't care about you. You're just a forgotten soul. My house gave you a chance to start over, but you blew it. I'll make it right. I didn't mean to upset you, Ricky. Please let me out. I hate being in the dark. Daddy's girl, huh? Why don't you call out to him? Maybe he'll magically appear and rescue his princess. He closed the window and left. As I sat in the cold, dark basement, fear and anger consumed me. How did things get to this point? All I did was stand up for myself against my mother-in-law's unfair treatment, and now I was paying the price. As I reached into my pockets, I felt my broken and shattered phone. I lost all hope. But then, I noticed a faint blinking light on the screen. I still had a chance to call my dad. With trembling hands and tears streaming down my face, I dialed his number. My voice shook as I told him what had happened, desperately hoping he could somehow rescue me from this nightmare. 2 days later, when I was barely hanging on and despair threatened to overwhelm me, I heard a car pull up outside the house. My heart raced as I strained to hear footsteps coming down the stairs. When the door swung open and I saw my father standing tall and resolute, a wave of relief and disbelief washed over me. I couldn't believe he had dropped everything to come save me. He had brought some cops with him. Rick and Allie were arrested on the spot. They tried to lie, but it was futile. You have no idea what you'll face in court, you psychopaths. What have you done to my little girl? We are truly sorry. We never meant any harm. I was planning to let her go today, I swear, Rick pleaded. And who are you to decide my daughter's fate? You're nothing but a pathetic scumbag from the gutter. All right, Sandra, let's go. As my dad led me out of that dark basement, I felt a newfound sense of strength and determination. The ordeal had been incredibly tough, but it showed me that I could overcome anything with my dad's unwavering support. From that moment on, I promised myself to stand up for myself and never let anyone silence me again. I hope Ricky and his mom rot in jail. I'm planning to move to New Orleans with my dad. Texas doesn't feel safe anymore, and I'll make sure to never trust online strangers again. Lesson learned. My son and I are about to start living a luxurious life abroad with his $3 million. Once you get divorced, you won't be able to support yourself. If you want to know where we're going, you need to get on your knees and lick my shoes. What? What are you saying? I don't understand. I had no idea what my mother-in-law was talking about. I never knew they were planning to go abroad or that they had saved up so much money. It's because my son has $3 million. We're going to live a fancy life overseas, just the two of us. Why would my husband go abroad? And what's this about $3 million? Why do you want to know so badly? If you really want to know, kneel down, beg, and lick my shoes. Then maybe I'll tell you. Why are you acting like this? Where is my husband? Oh, we're very comfortable here. We're enjoying the high life with my son's $3 million, so you're no longer needed. I was shocked by my mother-in-law's words. What does she mean that my husband suddenly got $3 million and is living a luxurious life abroad? And why is she talking as if I'm an outsider? I was filled with anger and anxiety, but I needed to stay calm and figure out what was going on. How did my husband get such a huge amount of money? And could that $3 million be connected to something else? I work as a manager at a big IT company, and that's where I met my husband. His positive and cheerful personality drew me to him, and we eventually got married. In the early years of our marriage, his parents welcomed me warmly. Later on, we had a daughter who is now 14 years old. I grew up in poverty and had a difficult relationship with my parents. Because of my own challenging upbringing, I was determined to give my daughter all the love and care she deserved, while also balancing my career and household responsibilities. However, one day, my husband was assigned to a project in Texas and had to move there alone. It's going to be tough managing everything on my own with our daughter, I told him. Yeah, handling work, chores, and our daughter by yourself will be a lot. Maybe we should ask my mom to come and help out, he suggested. Reluctantly, I agreed, seeing it as a practical solution to our situation. So, we decided to have my mother-in-law move in with us to lend a hand. "Mommy, when is Daddy coming back?" my daughter asked one day. "He's going to be in Texas for a while. But don't worry, Grandma's coming over," I reassured my daughter. And so, my mother-in-law moved in with us. Little did I know that this decision would become the biggest regret of my life. "You're working late again today, huh?" Women who neglect their families. I would often come home to her biting remarks. "I have a job too, and I take care of our daughter," I would argue back, but she was never satisfied. "When I was young, family meant everything. I never even thought about working outside the home," she would reminisce. Then, on the day my daughter received good grades at school, she remarked, "It's all thanks to me. What's the point of you? Maybe we don't need you around." Despite my mother-in-law only helping with simple homework tasks, I was the one teaching my daughter most subjects. Whenever I made a small mistake while cooking, she'd criticize, "How did you and my son survive before with such poor cooking skills?" "I'm doing my best and everyone has their own way," I'd retort, feeling my patience wearing thin. "She's not doing her chores," she'd complain to my husband. "Mom, she's working too. Please understand," my husband would defend me. Living together, tensions between my mother-in-law and me grew. With my husband far away, I felt increasingly isolated. One day, I decided to call my husband to talk about it. "How? Are you okay right now?" "Yeah, I'm good. What's up? It's kind of late." "Well, your mom really laid into me about the house chores, and it's starting to get to me." "I'm sorry. Mom's always been sharp-tongued, but maybe there's something to what she's saying. Still, don't let it bother you too much. Just keep doing things at your own pace." Feeling somewhat reassured by my husband's words, I tried to refocus on our daily routine. But with my husband away, the pressure from my mother-in-law kept mounting, and I was becoming increasingly exhausted. Each day, I eagerly awaited my husband's return. Living with my mother-in-law in my husband's absence was tough. At first, I clung to his memory to get through, but as weeks passed, her behavior became unbearable. She criticized every little thing I did from morning till night. When I made my husband's favorite rice dish, she coldly remarked, "This tastes terrible. Who would eat this?" If I took a short break, she'd scold me, saying, "How can a woman who can't handle household chores take a break?" I never had much confidence in housework. With my husband, he would just laugh off my small mistakes. But in front of my mother-in-law, I felt like I couldn't afford to make any errors. I think her treatment of me comes from her intense love for her son. She seems unwilling to accept that he married me and moved away from her. This experience made me resolve never to become an overbearing parent like her. One day, after treating myself to a small shopping spree at a local mall, my mother-in-law found out. When I got home, she was waiting for me at the entrance, furious. "How could you go out for fun when your husband isn't home? What about the household chores?" I thought I needed a little break. "A break? In this situation? All this trouble is because of your incompetence." After that encounter, I waited for a call from my husband. I hoped hearing his voice would lift my spirits, but what he said was far from comforting. "I've got some bad news. My work in Texas isn't going well. I got into gambling, and now I'm in a tight spot financially. I've also accumulated quite a debt," my husband confessed over the phone. "What? Are you serious? Gambling in debt? This is completely unexpected. What about our future and our daughters?" I replied, shocked and worried. "I'm sorry, really sorry. I feel stuck right now, but trust me, I'll figure something out," he pleaded. "How? How do you plan to handle this? How much do you owe?" "I'm working on a solution," was all he could say. I always believed my husband was sincere and wouldn't gamble. He was always dependable, never missing our dates. Even after we moved in together, he always came straight home from work and appreciated everything I did around the house. It was his honesty and sincerity that made me fall in love with him. But now, with him far away and my mother-in-law's constant criticism, my life felt unbearable. "I can't believe someone as useless as you married my son," my mother-in-law's harsh words echoed in my mind. My heart sank deeper into despair as my husband continued working away from home. Constantly criticized and blamed by my mother-in-law, the weight of my husband's recent confession about his debts and gambling only added to my despair. With the barrage of criticism from her, I reached a breaking point. One night, overwhelmed, I left the house and found myself crying on a park bench. Then one day, my mother-in-law unearthed a secret from my past. During dinner, she used it against me. So, I heard you used to work in a nightclub, huh? Shame on you for raising my grandchild after working in such a place. How did you find out about that? I was telling someone about how useless my son's wife is and showed them a picture of you. They recognized you. Apparently, you weren't even good at that nightclub job. In my past, frustrated with a mother who never worked and always partied, I left my family home. Struggling for money, I found work at a nightclub. This was before I married my husband, a secret I thought he didn't know. I was speechless. I never imagined my mother-in-law would discover this about my past, and now she was using it against me. I can't believe someone like you is the mother of my grandchild. I'll tell my son and have you kicked out. My despair deepened. Everything I had built with my husband, all my efforts, and the future I had hoped for seemed to crumble under her words. My husband's communication became scarce, and I fear he was beginning to doubt and suspect me. One night, alone in my room, I reflected on my life, meeting my husband, our marriage, our current situation, and the constant blame and accusations from my mother-in-law. I felt like I couldn't go on. I can't take it anymore. Whispering those words, I stepped out into the quiet nighttime streets, feeling the weight of despair inside me. My mother-in-law's harsh words echoed in my mind, criticizing my past, my secrets, and my present. Sitting alone on a park bench, I looked up at the sky, devoid of stars, feeling as dark inside as it was outside. Suddenly, someone approached. "Mom, why are you here?" It was my daughter, sitting down beside me and holding my hand. "Mom, don't let Grandma get to you. You work hard at your IT job, and you've overcome so much. You're strong." "Thank you, but maybe Grandma is right." "Mom, Grandma is stuck in the past. In today's world, any job you've done should make you proud. I'm proud that you worked at a nightclub." "Really?" "Yes, because it shows you've always tried your best for us, no matter the circumstances. Don't let Grandma's words control you." My daughter's words touched me deeply, and tears welled up in my eyes. "Mom, you're doing such a great job in IT now, right? That's amazing. I'll always support you, no matter what Grandma says." Gratitude flooded my heart. Her unwavering support gave me renewed strength and hope that we could face anything together. Later, in my husband's study, I took a deep breath before diving into a pile of paperwork. I meticulously went through each document, trying to unravel his secrets. Bank statements, credit card bills, loan agreements. Gradually, my husband's financial situation began to reveal itself. Why did this happen? I discovered several receipts detailing gambling activities, horse racing, slot machines, and casino visits. The realization of how much money my husband had squandered was heartbreaking. Turning on his PC, I guessed the reverse version of his birthday as the password to access his email. Inside, I found numerous collection emails from financial institutions and messages from friends demanding repayment of loans. Additionally, his inbox was flooded with promotional emails from gambling websites. I decided to tally up the total amount my husband had spent on gambling. The staggering result was $3 million, far exceeding what I had anticipated. Seeing that figure, I felt a moment of panic, but I knew I had to act swiftly. I started planning how to secure funds to sustain our livelihood. This included tapping into my savings, estimating proceeds from selling our high-end electronics and luxury items at home, and budgeting with my salary savings. Every detail mattered in this critical moment. Afterward, I continued my personal investigation. Every day, I diligently contacted financial institutions to understand the extent of my husband's debts, obtaining credit reports in his name. A few days later, I formulated a plan. I started laying the groundwork to establish a life independent of my husband and mother-in-law, while also devising the strategy to repay his debts. Leveraging my expertise in the IT industry, I decided to pursue freelance projects. Over the next few days, I built a portfolio and signed up on a freelance job platform. Shortly after, I received my first request from a client. "This will help cover some of our living expenses," I thought gratefully. In between my daily work, I meticulously reviewed our household finances. I canceled unnecessary subscriptions, reduced wasteful spending, and researched budget-friendly recipes to cut down on food expenses. With insights from local moms, I organized a community yard sale, successfully selling branded items and extra electronics for a decent sum. As my freelance work gained momentum over the following weeks, I began to feel more secure about my income. By then, my bank account held enough to cover our essential living expenses. When I returned home one day, I noticed all of my mother-in-law's belongings were gone. At the same time, my phone rang. It was my mother-in-law calling. "Oh, are you already home? Did you notice our stuff is gone?" My mother-in-law's voice came through the phone. "What are you trying to say?" I asked cautiously. "My son and I are starting a luxurious life abroad with his $3 million. Once you divorce, you won't be able to make ends meet. If you want our address, get on your knees and lick my shoes," she declared arrogantly. I couldn't help but chuckle. Actually, that $3 million is a debt. "Stop joking. There's no way my son has that kind of debt," she retorted confidently. "You might not believe it, but it's true. In his study, there are transaction records from banks and financial institutions, credit card bills, contracts, and more. Plus, on his PC, there are collection emails from financial institutions, messages from friends demanding repayment, and promotional emails from gambling sites. If you don't believe me, why don't you check?" "You're lying," she insisted. "It's the result of his deep involvement in gambling, horse racing, slot machines, casinos. In total, it amounts to a staggering $3 million. I've just sent you photos of the evidence. Maybe you should take a look." I had no idea, my mother-in-law admitted, her voice softening. "He probably didn't want you to know, but these are the facts. I've been figuring out how to handle this enormous debt, but I suppose I don't need to anymore." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "I truly didn't know. I don't know what to say," she finally responded. Without another word, I ended the call. I knew I had to start afresh from this point onward. Despite the shock caused by my husband and mother-in-law's actions, I resolved to move forward for the sake of my daughter and myself. Later on, my husband called. "I'm so sorry. Truly, I am." My husband's voice came through, subdued in a way I had never heard before. But despite his apology, my anger burned unabated. "Why did it come to this? Our family is falling apart because of you," I retorted sharply. "I never thought it would come to this. But when I decided to go overseas with Mom, I couldn't see a future with you and our daughter," he explained, his words leaving me stunned. "You couldn't see? It's because of your recklessness and lack of planning that our family is in this mess," I accused bitterly. "I know that, but it's too late now. I made a promise to Mom," he replied. "A promise? What kind of promise sacrifices our daughter's future for your own paradise?" I challenged, feeling the weight of betrayal. There was a prolonged silence from my husband. "Did you ever truly love our family?" "I did, but now it's different." His voice broke, and I could hear him crying. "Please don't hurt us anymore. My daughter and I will live on our own from now on. We'll move on without you." He didn't respond. All I could hear was his sobbing from the other end. Calmly, I hung up the phone. The confusion started when my mother-in-law mistook a bill for $3 million as a winning lottery notice. Believing they had come into a windfall, she began planning their dream move overseas and convinced my husband to go along. Unaware of her misunderstanding and thinking a fresh start abroad would solve their financial woes, he agreed. Realizing it was a bill and not a lottery win, my anger towards my husband grew. I began searching for a lawyer, preparing for divorce, and seeking compensation for emotional distress and child support. A new chapter was about to begin, for me and my daughter, free from my husband and mother-in-law. I consulted with a lawyer about the divorce process, emotional distress claims, and securing child support. During this time, my daughter and I bonded deeply, and she became my strongest supporter. She fully understood my decision and chose to stand by me. Hearing her unwavering support made all the hardships with my husband and mother-in-law worthwhile, and tears of relief and gratitude flowed freely. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law and husband struggled in their new life overseas. Despite their hopes for a fresh start, they encountered ongoing challenges due to inadequate preparation and financial troubles. Their situation worsened when they were pickpocketed and lost their remaining funds, compounded by language barriers. Eventually, they were deported for overstaying their visas. Later on, I negotiated the terms of the divorce through my lawyer. The divorce was finalized, and we agreed that my husband would pay emotional distress compensation and child support in a single lump sum. As my daughter and I embraced our new life free from the turmoil of the past, I felt a sense of peace knowing we were moving forward together, stronger and more resilient than before. "Thank you. Now I can finally start a new life," I expressed with relief. But all at once, Wouldn't it be better in installments? The lawyer suggested. He's taken on even more debt, apparently borrowing money from some shady loan shark. I don't know what happened to him after that, and honestly, I don't care. After being evicted from her rental property and losing all her savings due to being pickpocketed, my mother-in-law found herself homeless upon her return to the U.S. Meanwhile, my daughter and I embarked on our new life. It wasn't without its challenges, but being free from the burden of my husband and mother-in-law allowed us to face the future with optimism. I am determined to live happily, working together with my daughter, who has been my beacon of hope through the darkest times. I'm staying over tonight. Can you make room for all of us? Wait a minute. I already told you, I have plans to go see a play tonight, and it'll be late when I get back. That's why I said we'd all stay here. When her son wasn't home, his mom showed up unexpectedly with 7 friends. I hadn't been told about this visit and I had my own plans, so I tried to say no. But you'll be back soon, right? We'll just leave our stuff here and go out for a while. Could you get dinner ready and set up places for us to sleep? She acted like she didn't care about my situation and acted as if everything was already arranged. To make things worse, I noticed the necklace she was wearing. I had put up with her rude behavior for a long time without saying anything, but this was too much. I can't. I'm leaving for a trip right now. What? You're going on a trip? Who's going with you? My unexpected refusal surprised her. I had finally reached my breaking point after enduring her constant nagging. Please give me back that necklace. It was time for my mother-in-law to face the consequences of her actions. My name is Michelle Gorman, and I'm a 30-year-old housewife. After I got married, I used my experience in administration to become a computer class instructor. My husband, Mike, is busy every day as the president of his father's company. Sometimes he seems lost in thought, but it makes me happy to see him relaxed, especially when we go on our favorite movie dates. I feel better when I'm with you, he often says. I'm glad if I can make his life a little easier. I wish I could offer him advice or suggestions, but I've always found it hard to speak up. Since I was young, I've preferred listening to others rather than talking about myself. My older brother, who's 4 years older than me, has always looked out for me. I used to dislike that about myself, but thanks to Mike's support, I've started to gain some confidence. Mike has an older brother who works as the vice president in their father's company. His wife, Mindy, is around my age, and we get along great. She's focused on her career, reliable, and kind. I admire how she stands up for herself and shares her opinions, yet she's also understanding and flexible. Watching her stand up to the mother-in-law was really impressive. Unfortunately, they live far away, so I don't get to see them often, which I regret. On the other hand, the mother-in-law acts like she's the daughter of the company president, always confident, but her stubbornness and arrogance are clear. Michelle, you're Mike's wife, the president. You should quit your job as a computer instructor and fully support your husband, she'd say, putting a lot of pressure on me. Mike would support me, but she'd still be unhappy. Sometimes I was glad we lived apart. I just wanted a peaceful life with Mike and hopefully children someday. But then Mike's father passed away suddenly from a heart attack. It was a shock for everyone, and Mike and his brother had to figure out what to do with the family company. Mike decided to stay in New York for a while. I went back home and waited for Mike's updates. With the extra responsibilities on both of them, I was worried. After talking with his brother, they decided that Mike would move to the company's main office in New York. His brother became the new president and Mike became the vice president. We looked for a house in New York and found a nice one that was already built. It was a bit far from the train station, but it was in a quiet area, which felt safe. The house had lots of sunlight, so it seemed like we'd have a comfortable life there. Since Mike had to work late because of all the changes at work, I made sure our home was cozy so he could relax and prepared healthy lunches for him. I wanted to do everything I could to support him. And just like that, a month went by. I'm back. I'm starving, Mike said. Thanks for working so hard. I'll make dinner, I replied. Thanks. Hey, Michelle, my mom wants to visit this weekend. Is that okay? I was worried that she might be feeling lonely since Mike's dad passed away, so I was glad to hear this. Of course. We still have some things to tidy up, but she's welcome, I said. Thanks. I'll tell her. Oh, maybe I should ask my brother and his wife to join too, Mike suggested. Yeah, that's a great idea, I replied. It might sound strange, but moving here meant I could see Mindy, my sister-in-law, more often, which was a nice surprise. That weekend, we all got together to talk about what had been happening and share memories of my father-in-law. It's sad that Dad's gone, but I didn't want to stay sad forever, so I started a new hobby, my mother-in-law said with a smile. She always looked elegant, wearing beautiful dresses and nice jewelry. Today, she looked stylish with a light purple scarf that stood out. She seemed to have lost some weight, but she was still firm when giving advice to Mike and his brother about the company. But since my father-in-law passed away, I noticed she was being stricter with me. Michelle, we're running out of drinks. Can you go buy some? She asked. Jessica, I can go get them, Mindy offered. Oh, can you? That would be really helpful, she said, sounding more demanding towards me than she did towards Mindy. I thought maybe she was struggling with the loss of her husband, so I decided to let her comments go for a while and just watch. After dinner, Mike drove everyone home, and the night was over. Since then, my mother-in-law started coming to our house a lot. She started criticizing how I kept the house and complaining about Mindy, and she started going through our fridge without asking, which surprised me. Michelle, Mike is so busy right now. You should pay more attention to the meals you make for him. What if he gets sick too? Yes, I'll be more careful. And there's still trash here. Can't you clean up properly? I'm sorry. It kept going like this. It felt like she was just finding things to criticize about me to pass the time. But whenever Mindy came over, she'd leave quickly, saying she had other things to do. She said it wasn't because she didn't like me, but I felt differently. Maybe she found it easier to boss me around, since I hardly ever argued back, than to do the same to Mindy, who always spoke her mind. I thought about getting a job to spend less time at home. But even after I found one, my mother-in-law's harassment got worse. Michelle, we're out of barbecue sauce at our place, so get some while you're out. I brought some leftovers with me, so I'll take them. Her boldness sometimes left me speechless. She could easily afford to buy fancy ingredients from a fancy store. Then something happened. A necklace that was very special to me disappeared. It was a keepsake from my mother, and I always kept it safe on a shelf in my room. The only person who came to mind was my mother-in-law, since she visited often. Even though I didn't want to suspect her, she often looked around our house and probably knew where most things were. Despite searching everywhere, I couldn't find it, so I decided to ask her about it. That's when she exploded with anger, yelling, "You probably lost it yourself. How dare you accuse me? What kind of person are you? I'm sorry, I searched everywhere I could think of, but I couldn't find it. It's a special keepsake from my mother, and it means a lot to me." More than feeling angry about being accused, I was devastated about losing something so precious from my mom, and tears started to fall. I don't care, it's just a necklace. Why don't you just ask Mike to buy you a new one? It's not about getting a new one. I realized she wouldn't understand my feelings. I decided not to talk about it anymore. But then money from my wallet and other things around the house started disappearing. Even though I kept an eye on my mother-in-law, I never saw her take anything. Confused and tired of it all, I talked to Mindy about it. She said my mother-in-law was definitely the main suspect because no one else had access to our home. It made me sad to think that, but there wasn't any solid proof. I couldn't understand why she would do this, especially since she still had lots of money from my father-in-law's inheritance. Seeing how upset I was, Mindy had an idea. Little did I know where it would lead. About 2 weeks after talking to Mindy, I was getting ready for a trip. "I'm heading out, Michelle. Just relax and enjoy your time," Mindy said. "Take care," I replied. Mike and his brother were going on a business trip to meet with a company from another state. Mindy suggested I take a break too and invited me on a short vacation. I've been feeling really drained lately, so the idea of getting away sounded nice. I packed early and left my travel bag by the door, ready to go. Then the doorbell rang. I wondered who it could be, so I checked the video feed and saw my mother-in-law. But she wasn't alone. She had a bunch of friends with her. "Hi, Michelle. I brought some friends. Can you let us in?" Opening the door, I saw my mother-in-law and about 7 of her friends, all carrying big bags. Were they planning to stay here? "We're staying over tonight. Make us feel comfortable." "Excuse me? Didn't I mention it? We're going to see a play nearby tonight, and since it ends late, we decided to stay here," she said casually. This was news to me, especially since my departure time was approaching. "Oh, did I inconvenience you? Jessica told me you were okay with it." I hadn't heard anything like that, and it seemed like she was making up excuses. Feeling more and more frustrated, I responded firmly. I'm sorry, but I wasn't told about this, and I already have plans. She looked surprised by my answer. But you'll be back soon, right? We'll just drop our bags and go out for a while. Can you make dinner and set up beds for us? Ignoring my plans, she seemed to think everything was already arranged. I can't. I'm going on a trip. A trip? Who with? With Mindy. Oh, just with Mindy? You can go anytime. We've come all this way just for today. How long are you going to make us wait? She pressed, disregarding my plans. Then, I noticed something glinting around her neck. Wait, that necklace you're wearing. To my astonishment, it was the same necklace that was a precious memento from my mother. Jessica, where did you get that necklace? Why, it's just one of my collections. Is there a problem? She replied with a smug look. That can't be right. That necklace is rare and limited edition. While I was talking to her, Mindy arrived. I was wondering why you didn't show up at our meeting place and didn't contact me. So this is what was happening. I'm sorry I couldn't get in touch, Mindy. Seeing my expression, Mindy instantly knew something was wrong. What's going on? I got upset because the necklace she's wearing is the same one that belonged to my mother, which recently went missing. Of the one you kept in that box, Mindy said it loudly enough for everyone to hear. Suddenly, my mother-in-law, trying to keep it from her friends, whispered to us. Can you two stop this? It's embarrassing. Do you want to accuse me of theft? Yes, I find it suspicious, Mindy answered firmly. Do you have any proof that I stole it? It's embarrassing to have such unreasonable daughters-in-law. Please don't make a scene in front of my friends. With that, she turned back to her friends with a smile. Well, let's go inside, everyone. As she tried to move inside, I remembered something. The initials. My mother's initials are engraved on the necklace. Jessica, can I have a look, please? Mindy quickly went behind her to check. Enough of this. What's your mother's name? It's Kate Young, so the initials should be Ki. There it is, the initials Ki, I said, pointing out the engraving. The friends looked horrified and stepped back. Stop this. I didn't come here for this. Let's go, everyone, my mother-in-law insisted. We're not letting you leave, Mindy said firmly. The friends, sensing the tension, quickly muttered, We're not involved, and hurried towards the subway. Wait, there's been some mistake. My mother-in-law tried to follow her friends, but someone stopped her. What are you doing here? Weren't you supposed to be on a business trip? Standing there was Mike. It turned out his business trip was actually scheduled for the next day. He had deliberately given his mother a false date to investigate her actions. Mindy had told Mike about the missing items from our house after I talked to her. At first, Mike was unsure, but after visiting his childhood home and seeing similar items to ours, he began to suspect theft. However, without evidence, he knew she could easily deny it, so he came up with today's plan. Inviting friends for an overnight stay was unexpected, but he was sure his mother would come if she thought he wasn't home. What are you doing here? Mike demanded. I was just leaving, my mother-in-law said as she tried to go, but I stopped her. Give it back. That necklace isn't yours. It's a keepsake from my parents. Why do you have it, Mom? I demanded. It's not what you think. I found it in my purse. Michelle must have set me up, she claimed, suddenly shifting the blame to me, seemingly fearing she was in trouble. Do you really think such a lie would work? There's no way Michelle would do something like that. First, give the necklace back to Michelle. We'll talk after that, Mike said firmly. Reluctantly, she took off the necklace, threw it on the ground, and tried to run away. Hey, wait. We tried to chase her, but stopped shortly after. We didn't need to anymore. Huh? I was taken aback as 10 police officers stood in front of my mother-in-law. I was unsure about what was happening, just staring at the bizarre scene. Then one of the officers spoke up. We received a report from a local resident. They said someone who seemed to be causing a disturbance here was often seen entering this house when the owners were away. They asked us to come quickly. What are you talking about? I'm the mother of the son living here. Getting the police involved in a family matter? My mother-in-law retorted, looking annoyed. Wait, what do you mean she entered when we weren't home? I never did such a thing, I interjected. I always come when you're home. Did the informant say anything else? When we asked the police, they mentioned that someone had witnessed my mother-in-law sneaking into our backyard, likely using a spare key to get inside. Indeed, we had a spare key hidden beneath a plant pot in the backyard. This realization gave us chills and also explained the missing items. Mike had considered this possibility and was planning to observe her actions while we were out today, but he never expected to find out the truth in this manner. "Mom, why were you coming into our house when we weren't home?" "It's all lies. You're going to believe some unknown person's story," she retorted. "But you did have my precious necklace, didn't you?" I pressed. "I told you I found it in my purse," my mother-in-law insisted. One of the officers stepped in, saying calmly, "Let's talk about this at the station." "But I didn't do anything." "Mike, say something," she pleaded. "Mom, stop this. I can't understand why you did this," Mike said firmly. Upon hearing her son's words, my mother-in-law collapsed to the ground. But just when it seemed like she had nowhere left to run and was feeling defeated, she suddenly flew into a rage. "Because after your father passed away, I felt so lonely, and seeing her always so cheerful, I couldn't stand it. I felt better seeing her troubled. I wanted her to feel the pain I felt," she shouted. Mike was red-faced hearing her irrational reasoning. "Mike, wait, let me speak," I said, feeling the need to confront the issue head-on. I stepped in front of an increasingly angry Mike. "I understand where you're coming from, Jessica. Perhaps I've been neglectful by always brushing off our talks. However, stealing is a different matter entirely. Did you want to upset me?" "Don't be ridiculous," she snapped. "Did you find joy in pushing someone to their limits with such a twisted and dirty scheme? Did that fill the void of your loneliness?" I asked, trying to understand her actions. "Shut up. What do you know about me?" she snapped back defensively. "If you're feeling down, then tell us." "We can't read minds," I said, trying to reason with her. "Don't make fun of me." "Why would I tell you anything, you worthless daughter-in-law?" she lashed out. "Mom, Michelle's right," Mike intervened firmly. Seeing that the situation wasn't progressing, the police stepped in, suggesting a move to the station. "Are you really going to take me in?" "I can't believe this," she protested. Despite her resistance, given the eyewitness accounts of the unlawful entry and the suspicion of theft from possessing my belongings, the police decided to question my mother-in-law, and so she was promptly arrested on charges of unlawful entry and theft. She continued to protest her innocence, demanding a lawyer and refusing to eat the food provided. During a visit from her father, he expressed his anger and urged her to deeply reflect on her actions. This stern admonition prompted a change in her demeanor as she tearfully apologized. Despite her typically carefree nature, her father's authority seemed to be the only one she wouldn't challenge. He warned her that unless she genuinely reflected on her behavior, she shouldn't expect to have a home to return to. Reluctantly, she appeared to accept the reality of her situation. Perhaps the loss of her husband had left my mother-in-law searching for her place in the world. Were her expensive clothes and jewelry merely a shield to protect herself? I even began to wonder if her differing treatment of me and my sister-in-law was just a facade to conceal her vulnerabilities. However, her excessive desires and inability to control them were a separate issue. It was clear that making wrong judgments had led to this unfortunate incident. I was shocked to see the situation escalate to such a degree, especially realizing that my mother-in-law had been using a spare key to enter our house without our knowledge. It genuinely terrified me to think about the potential dangers of someone entering our home without permission. Later, I discovered that the couple living diagonally across from us had reported her. The wife, who works from home, had noticed my mother-in-law entering our yard suspiciously multiple times and found it concerning. I'm incredibly grateful for their courageous actions. Since then, we've been enjoying a peaceful life. To ensure our safety, we changed our locks and stopped hiding a spare key in the yard. Mike decided to cut ties with his mother and made her promise not to contact us again. He warned of legal action if she attempted to do so. After her release, she returned to her rural childhood home and reportedly adopted a more modest lifestyle. A significant change from her previous lavish ways. Under the watchful eye of her father, she now helps around the house from early morning. I sincerely hope she takes this opportunity to reflect on her past behaviors. Meanwhile, my own father has moved in with us as a precaution against any further unexpected visits from my mother-in-law. He's here to ensure my safety. But there's another reason he's with us. I'm currently expecting our first child. The anticipation of becoming grandparents, coupled with the support of Mike, fills me with a sense of warmth and determination. While material possessions can bring temporary satisfaction, it's the presence of loved ones that truly enriches our lives. As we discuss our living arrangements surrounded by our dear ones, we are committed to preserving the peace and happiness of our daily lives. But, go away, said my mother-in-law, Catherine, in a very unfriendly way. When my husband got a job overseas, Catherine decided I couldn't stay in the house anymore, so my daughter and I had to leave. We didn't have anywhere else to go, so I went to the park, holding my 2-year-old daughter, feeling confused and lost about what to do next. Suddenly, police officers surrounded me. Please come to the station, one of the officers said. It was raining heavily and I was cold and shaking. I followed the officer to the police station. When I got there, someone unexpected was waiting for me. My name's Emma, and I'm going to be 35 this year. I met my husband Bob at work, and after a year of dating, we got married. When we got married, I stopped working, and 2 years ago, our daughter Lily was born. Right now, I live with Bob, Lily, and my mother-in-law, Catherine. We used to rent a place, but after Catherine's husband passed away and she started having trouble with her knees, we decided to all live together and bought a new apartment. We thought about buying a house. But because Catherine's knees aren't so good, we figured it'd be better to live somewhere near public transportation. Buying an apartment was cheaper than a house back then, and it has an elevator, which makes things easier for us. Catherine also liked the idea of the apartment, so we put some money down and got a loan that will pay off over 35 years. Bob's job often involves traveling or moving to different places, but after we bought the house, we were told he wouldn't have to relocate anytime soon. However, he still travels a lot for work, about once a week to other states. Having a 2-year-old daughter, I feel really stressed when Bob goes away on these trips. At first, Catherine, my mother-in-law, was helpful, but now she doesn't pitch in with taking care of Lily at all. Instead, she makes more work for me. For example, she leaves dirty dishes lying around after eating, and she doesn't even bother to rinse cooking utensils, which makes them really hard to clean later. Even when I ask her to at least rinse them, she just says sorry and promises to do better next time, but she doesn't follow through. I noticed something strange recently. She rinses the dishes when Bob is around, but not when it's just me. At first, I thought it was okay since she sometimes rinsed them, but now I think she's doing it on purpose to make things difficult for me. It's not just about the dishes either. Sometimes she'll ask if I need anything from the store, and when I say no, she'll later say she actually did need something after I've already come back. This happens a lot. Considering Catherine's knee problems, I try my best to help her with moving around, but my willingness to assist has been decreasing over time. Catherine's behavior started not long after we all started living together, and it's been happening for years now. When I talked to a friend about it, she said, "That sounds like she's bullying you. Why don't you talk to Bob? I think he might help." But I worried that if I talked to Bob about it, Catherine, who doesn't have any other family, might end up in a care facility. So I thought it might be best for me to just put up with it. However, one day, something happened that made me reconsider. That day, I was planning to drop Lily off at my parents' house. They always enjoyed having Lily over and suggested I stay the night too. I wanted to, but I felt uneasy about leaving Catherine alone at home. So after a short chat with my parents, I decided to head back to the apartment where Catherine was waiting. When I got there, I realized I had left my keys at home, which left me feeling worried. But then I remembered that Catherine was home, so I decided to ring the intercom to get inside. I pressed the button and waited for her to answer, but there was no response. I wondered if she had gone out, so I waited outside for a while. But even after waiting for about 2 hours, Catherine didn't come back. It was getting dark, and I was getting worried. Just as it was getting dark, another resident returned, and I followed them inside when they unlocked the main entrance. I was sure Catherine was at home because she rarely went out at night. So I pressed the intercom button outside our apartment, but still there was no answer. I waited by the door for a while, and then I heard a faint sound from inside, which meant Catherine was there. I tried the intercom a few more times, but Catherine didn't come out. Feeling defeated, I decided to stay at a nearby motel for the night. I planned to go back home when Bob returned from his business trip. When I told Bob what happened with Catherine locking me out, he was understandably upset. But Catherine just brushed it off, saying she might not have heard me because of her age. I could tell she was smirking, though. I was relieved to be back inside and grabbed my keys to pick up Lily from my parents' house. After talking to my parents about what happened, they offered me comfort and told me I could always come back to stay with them if things got too tough. Their words brought tears to my eyes, but I quickly wiped them away before heading home with Lily. For a while, things were okay with Catherine, but then, unexpectedly, Bob's transfer to another country became permanent. He asked me what I thought about it, but I couldn't give him an immediate answer. Considering the potential stress it could cause Lily, I decided it would be best for her and me to stay in the US. Soon after we decided I and Lily would stay in the US while Bob went to Europe, he had to leave. He was worried about us, but he was so busy with work that he didn't have much time to think about it. So it was just me, Lily, and Catherine at home. But as expected, things went downhill with Catherine once Bob left. On a stormy day, when it was unsafe to go outside, Catherine dropped a bombshell on me. She suggested that Lily and I should move out now that Bob was gone. "Excuse me, what do you mean?" I asked, shocked. "Just what I said. I think it would be better if you and Lily found somewhere else to live. I'll take care of things here. I just don't feel comfortable with strangers in the house. It would be best if you left right away," Catherine said. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I've always tried to make living together with Catherine as good as possible. I've treated her like family even though we're not related. But to Catherine, it seemed like Lily and I didn't matter much at all. I was thinking about going back to my parents' house when Catherine suddenly said, "Why don't you just leave already?" Before I knew it, Lily and I were kicked out of our own home, just as we were, without even a chance to gather our things. No matter how hard I knocked on the door, Catherine wouldn't let us back in. I felt lost and confused. I carried Lily through the pouring rain to a nearby park. There was a shelter there that I hoped would keep us dry from the rain. Ideally, I would have gone to a motel or gone back to my parents' place. But I had left my wallet and phone inside the house. I felt helpless as I sat in the park, trying to figure out what to do next. I'm not sure how much time passed as the rain poured down. I was exhausted and cold, and I started to doze off. It was dark already, and even though it was summer, the cold was harsh, and I worried that Lily and I might get sick. As bad as things were, it seemed like the only option was to walk to my parents' house, even though it would take about 3 hours. As I was thinking about what to do next, I noticed 2 lights coming closer through the rain. They turned out to be police officers. I thought they might be able to help us, but before I could approach them, one of the officers called out to me, "Are you Emma? And is this little one Lily?" I was surprised they knew our names but replied, "Yes, that's us." Then the officer said, "Please come to the station with us." I wondered why they wanted us to go to the police station. If something was wrong, urged by the officer, Lily and I got into the patrol car. We were freezing from being out in the rain for so long, but the officers had brought big towels for us. "You might need these. We've got some spare clothes for you at the station," they said kindly. Curious about why they knew about us and why we were going to the police station, I asked, "How did you know where to find us?" They replied, "We'll explain everything once we're back at the station. For now, just try to relax." Exhausted, I soon fell asleep and woke up to find we had arrived at the police station. As I followed the officers into the police station, I was surprised to see Catherine and my uncle there. "Uncle, what are you doing here?" I asked. He explained, "Bob got in touch with me. He thought you might be having problems with his mom, and since he's overseas, he asked me to keep an eye on things for him." According to my uncle, Bob had talked to him about this before. He said Bob wanted him to keep an eye on things since he couldn't be there himself. My uncle had seen us in the rain earlier today. He had thought about taking us in himself, but he thought Catherine's behavior was too extreme, so he reported it to the police. That's how the officers knew where to find us. Catherine had also been asked to come to the police station. She sat on a sofa, glaring at me, seeming confused about why she was there. "Why do I have to be here? My knee hurts, you know." "If Bob were here, none of this would be happening," Catherine argued. But the whole situation had come about because Bob had asked my uncle for help. In the discussions with the police, it seemed like there could be legal implications to the events. So I was advised to think about hiring a lawyer. "An attorney? That seems like a big step." "I just locked the door, nothing more," Catherine protested. But my uncle intervened, pointing out that what she did was serious. Throwing me and a little child out in heavy rain isn't something that can be easily forgiven. He also clarified that I was actually the rightful owner of the house. Catherine was surprised, insisting that Bob, as the head of the household, should be the owner. But she was mistaken. My uncle, who works in real estate, had helped us get a great deal on a condo, and Bob had suggested putting it under my name. I hadn't thought much of it at the time, but now I was grateful I followed Bob's advice. Following my uncle's guidance, I decided to hire a lawyer. The lawyer explained that it would be tough to evict Catherine, so the best option might be to place her in a care facility. I immediately called Bob to update him. He hadn't expected things to escalate like this and said he wanted to come back from Japan to sort it out properly. He also mentioned that he was considering putting Catherine in a facility, unaware of the current situation. Despite being at the police station, Catherine seemed unconcerned as she casually snacked on some crackers. Since I couldn't go back home with her, I decided to stay at my parents' place until Bob returned. He was due back in a week, giving me time to figure out our next steps. If Bob didn't support me, divorce seemed like the only option. I regretted not seeking advice sooner. A week later, Bob returned from Europe and was at the house with Catherine. So I moved back home from my parents' place. Bob had to go back to Europe soon, so we needed to talk about what to do next. I heard some things from Emma's uncle. Is all of that true? Bob asked Catherine. It's all lies. I haven't done anything. Emma's plotting something to evict me. Catherine stubbornly denied any wrongdoing and accused me of scheming against her. Bob, who I thought would support me, seemed to be considering Catherine's side. I see. So do you have any evidence to prove Emma's plotting something? Bob asked Catherine. Evidence? No, of course not, she replied. Then Bob turned to me, asking, Emma, do you have any evidence? I hesitated, admitting, to be honest, I've been so busy with work I haven't been able to keep an eye on things. I'm not sure who to believe. I handed Bob a voice recorder I had with me. What's this? He asked. It contained recordings of Catherine's hurtful words and actions, capturing moments when she not only kicked me out but also often insulted me. When Bob played it, he heard Catherine saying awful things like, "You're such a worthless wife. I wonder why he even married you." Catherine quickly tried to defend herself, claiming it was taken out of context and just a one-time thing. But as the recordings played on, it became clear that her verbal abuse was a pattern, not just a one-off incident. Bob's hand trembled with tension and anger as he listened to the recordings. Catherine looked guilty as the truth sank in. Mom, what is this about? Bob demanded an explanation, but Catherine stayed silent. If you won't answer, then I have to believe this is all true. And if it is, I need to protect Emma and Lily. You understand that, right? Bob's anger was evident, something I hadn't seen in all our years together. Catherine, seeing this side of Bob for the first time, looked frightened and couldn't say a word. After many discussions before Bob's return to Europe, I made it clear that I couldn't continue living with Catherine, especially with Lily around. Bob seemed to agree, leaning towards placing Catherine in a care facility. However, Catherine strongly opposed this, making the discussions complicated. Despite her objections, I decided to sell the house. So you can't stay here anymore. If you don't want to go to the facility, you'll need to find somewhere else to live, Bob told Catherine. She resisted the idea of selling the house, but it was necessary for our plans. Layla and I had decided to move to Europe. Bob regretted not being more present for his family and wanted to be there for us moving forward. Although I was unsure about living abroad, knowing Bob would be with us made me feel better. Plus, it would be good for Lily to experience life in Europe at her young age. Selling the condo, which still had a mortgage, was our only option. If we didn't sell it, Catherine would have to cover the mortgage, which she couldn't afford on her fixed income. Considering her future, it was important for someone to be there to assist her. Despite our efforts, Catherine refused to move into a facility, so we had to forcefully place her there. I'm sorry, but I have to head back to Europe. Could you take care of any procedures needed here? Bob asked before leaving. With help from others, I managed to finalize Catherine's admission into the facility. The staff at the facility kept me updated on Catherine's condition, but it seems she's struggling. It would be one thing if she was just feeling down, but she's been causing trouble for the staff and other residents. Before leaving for Europe, I visited her to check on her. But she lashed out at me, saying, "Why have you locked me up in this place?" She also complained to the staff about the food, the beds, and the other residents. When I apologized to the staff, they were understanding. "It's okay," one of them reassured me. "We're used to this kind of behavior." Just leave it to us. We'll keep you updated, and if anything happens, we'll let you know. So don't worry. Despite all the harassment I endured from Catherine when we lived together, I couldn't help but feel worried as I headed to Europe. Upon arriving in Paris, Bob met me at the airport and we went to the apartment we had rented. They say rents in Paris are higher than in Texas. But since Bob's company gives him a housing allowance, we were lucky to find a spacious and affordable place. The neighbors in our building are very friendly and have been kind to me, even though I don't speak French fluently. Just yesterday, a neighbor shared some wine and cheese with me. In return, I gave them some mac and cheese. I'm gradually learning French along with my daughter, Lily. I know there's a limit to self-study, so I've also enrolled in a language school. There are many Americans there, many of whom, like me, are new to France. I've made some friends and am really enjoying my life in Paris. Back in the States, I always had to worry about Catherine, which often prevented me from fully enjoying outings with friends. But here, I can indulge in leisurely lunches just the way I like. The only concern right now is Lily. She's still too young for kindergarten, as kids here usually start the year they turn 5. I hope she picks up enough French by then. Fortunately, Lily seems to be catching on pretty quickly. I'm thinking of getting a job once Lily starts preschool. Bob says he's okay with me staying at home, but living in Paris has made me want to explore more opportunities. Seeing how ambitious and confident people are here has ignited something within me. I've become friends with a waitress at a nearby cafe, and she hinted that there might be a job opportunity for me there. The cafe is popular not only among the American community, but also with many locals who are learning English. There might be challenges ahead, but since coming to France, Bob and I have been communicating much better. I feel more confident in expressing my feelings, and I believe that no matter what happens, we'll face it as a family. Right now, I feel happier than I've ever been in my life. The new year was supposed to be a fresh start, but this time it brought a big surprise. The doorbell rang, breaking the quiet of my cozy home. I thought it might be a neighbor or a delivery person, so I opened the door casually, but I felt like my heart sank when I saw who was there. My sister Claire, who I hadn't wanted to see, and my ex-husband Ethan. Claire had her usual smug smile, looking almost proud next to Ethan. Seeing Ethan was like reopening an old wound. He looked arrogant and pretended to feel sorry. It had been 3 years since I'd seen them, and here they were, acting like nothing had happened. "Why are you here?" I asked, my voice trembling with shock. Claire laughed annoyingly. "Oh, look at that, Ethan." She's speechless. "What's wrong, Anna? Not happy to see your dear sister and loving ex-husband?" Ethan leaned against the doorframe, glancing around the room. "Yeah, Anna, we just thought we'd drop by, see how things are without us." I clenched my fists, trying hard not to slam the door on them. "This isn't your place anymore, Ethan. And you, Claire, shouldn't be here either." But they just smirked, unfazed by my attempt to stand up to them. Then Ethan said something that felt like a punch in the gut. "You know, Anna, I regret ever being with you. What a waste of my best years." Claire joined in, pretending to sympathize. Poor Anna, always falling short, even in marriage. Their mean words hurt, but before I could respond, another voice interrupted us. "Who's there, Anna?" It was my dad, George, who I wasn't expecting until later. Claire and Ethan looked surprised to see him, and their smirks disappeared as they shifted uncomfortably. "Dad, you're home early," I said, feeling relieved. George looked at the scene with narrowed eyes. "CLA, Ethan, what are you doing here?" Their confidence vanished under George's stern gaze. There was a tense silence. Claire finally spoke up. We just wanted to wish Anna a happy new year." George was skeptical. "Really? After all this time, you suddenly remember family on New Year's?" His tone was cold, hinting at hidden anger and disappointment. Ethan tried to regain control. "We also have some news, but maybe now's not the time." I knew their visit wasn't just about New Year's greetings. Their sudden arrival, smirks, and insults were all too familiar. A cycle of lies and manipulation. But I wasn't the same person they left behind. As they left awkwardly, promising to come back another time, I closed the door, feeling both relieved and anxious. Their return meant trouble, and this time, I had to be ready. After Claire and Ethan left, the house felt eerily quiet. My dad, George, sat opposite me, his face creased with worry. "Anna, what was that about? Why are they back?" I sighed, feeling the weight of old memories. I'm not sure, Dad, but with Claire and Ethan, there's always a motive. George nodded grimly. I remember how it all ended, how they hurt you. You owe them nothing, Anna. His support was comforting, but there was a part of the story he didn't fully grasp. The depth of Claire's manipulation. It dated back to our childhood, a time that should have been carefree but was overshadowed by Claire's selfishness. Dad, remember my 10th birthday? Grandma's porcelain doll. I asked, my voice tinged with sadness. George's face softened. Of course, you cherished that doll. I nodded, the memory vivid. Claire broke it on purpose, then blamed me. She cried to Mom, saying it was an accident caused by me. George looked surprised. I never knew that. Your mother always thought it was an accident. That was just the start, I said, feeling the pain of old memories. Claire always acted innocent, and I got blamed. She knew how to trick everyone around her. I saw regret in George's eyes, realizing what he hadn't seen before. I'm sorry, Anna. I should have seen it. It's not your fault, Dad said, his voice filled with regret. We were all fooled by Claire, I replied, taking a deep breath. Even with Ethan, she played us both. They deserve each other. George reached for my hand, offering comfort. What matters is you're away from their drama now. Don't let them pull you back in. I nodded, trying to force a smile. Talking with Dad reminded me that the past wasn't forgotten. Claire and Ethan's visit wasn't just casual. It hinted at more trouble ahead. That night, I couldn't sleep. Memories of Claire's schemes, how she always seemed better than me in our parents' eyes, how she effortlessly won Ethan over. It all haunted me. Her return meant trouble, and I felt a growing sense of dread. But amid the chaos in my mind, I started to feel determined. I wouldn't be a victim again. I'd confront Claire and Ethan. Whatever they were planning, I was ready to fight back. In the days after Claire and Ethan's visit, their words and smirks kept replaying in my mind. I threw myself into work, hoping to distract myself, but the past wouldn't let go. Remembering my marriage to Ethan, once filled with love, now felt like walking on thorns. It all started wonderfully. Ethan was charming, attentive, everything I thought I wanted. We were happy, or so I thought. But then things changed. Late nights, excuses, and avoiding my questions. I trusted him, ignoring my doubts and gut feelings. Then, one day, everything became clear. I came home early from a trip, excited to surprise Ethan. But I was the one surprised. I found Ethan and Claire together, laughing in our living room. It was a moment that shattered my world. The confrontation was a blur of tears, accusations, and painful truths. Claire showed no remorse, simply shrugging off my pain. You were always too focused on work, Anna. Ethan needed someone, and I was there. It's not our fault he lost interest in you. Ethan's words were just as hurtful. I thought I loved you, Anna, but Claire is different, more exciting. We were never right for each other. Their betrayal cut me deeply, shattering my heart and trust. The divorce was swift, with Ethan and Claire flaunting their relationship. I was left to piece together my shattered life, feeling foolish and betrayed. Sitting in my office, memories swirled, igniting anger within me. How dare they come back after what they did? How dare they disrupt my peace? But it wasn't just anger. It was a burning need for justice. I wanted them to feel a fraction of the pain they caused. Revenge, once repulsive, now seemed like the only way to close this chapter. I've decided. I'll confront them, demand answers, but I won't be the heartbroken wife this time. I'll be strong. They underestimated me once. They won't again. I dialed Ethan's number, my voice steady, my resolve unshakable. Ethan, we need to talk. Meet me at the cafe on 5th Street tomorrow at noon. His surprise stammer was a small victory. Sure, Anna. Tomorrow, he replied before the call ended. For the first time in days, I felt in control. The game had begun, and this time I was playing to win. The next day, the cafe was bustling. I spotted Ethan at a corner table, looking tense. His attempted smile didn't reach his eyes. Anna, thanks for coming. I wasn't sure you want to see me, he said, sounding unsure. I don't, I replied sharply, sitting across from him. But I need answers. Why are you and Claire back in my life? Ethan squirmed. Things haven't been great for us after we left. We've had some tough times. I felt a bitter satisfaction seeing him uneasy. Tough times? You expect sympathy from me? No, of course not, he stammered. It's just that Claire is pregnant. We thought it's time to mend fences, for the sake of family. His words hit me hard. Claire pregnant? I felt a twinge of hurt, but skepticism took over. And you expect me to? What? Forgive you just like that? I asked, my voice filled with disbelief. It's not just that, Anna, Eakin said, avoiding my gaze. There's the matter of your father's estate. So that was it, the real reason behind their sudden return. It wasn't remorse or reconciliation. It was greed. You have some nerve, Ethan. You cheat, you leave, and now you come back for money. I felt my anger boiling over, my voice rising in the crowded cafe. People can change, Anna. We've been through a lot. We just want a chance to start over, to be a family, he pleaded. A family built on lies and deceit. I shot back, my heart pounding with anger. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Claire. We need to talk. Alone. My place. Tonight. I glanced at Ethan, my mind made up. Tell Claire I'll see her tonight. But understand, Ethan, this isn't a family reunion. This is me settling the score. Ethan looked taken aback as I stood to leave. I felt a strange sense of power. I'd been their victim for too long. But now, things were changing. I walked out, leaving Ethan behind, my mind racing. Tonight's meeting with Claire wouldn't just be a talk. It would be the start of my revenge, a chance to reclaim my dignity and make them regret crossing me. Leaving Ethan behind at the cafe left me with a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, betrayal, and a newfound determination. Driving home, my mind buzzed with plans for confronting Claire later. I needed to brace myself against her manipulative ways. As evening approached, I stood in front of my mirror, mentally preparing. I saw a different woman from the one who once fell for Ethan or got overshadowed by Claire. Tonight, I was ready to face my past head-on. Claire's house was a sharp contrast to mine. Flashy, extravagant, a symbol of her and Ethan's shallow values. I knocked on the door, my heart racing but my resolve strong. When Claire opened it, she looked as poised and arrogant as ever. Anna, come in. I'm glad you could make it. Her tone dripped with condescension, as if inviting me in was some kind of favor. Stepping inside, I took in the extravagant decor. So Claire, why am I here? What do you want from me? I asked, cutting to the chase. Claire led me to the living room, her movements graceful yet calculated. I wanted to talk to you, sister to sister. It's been too long, and with the baby coming, I thought it's time we bury the hatchet. I almost laughed at her audacity. Bury the hatchet? After you stole my husband and now come back for my father's inheritance. Claire's expression hardened briefly before she composed herself. Anna, let's be practical. Ethan and I need financial stability for our child. Your father's estate can help with that. Her greed was clear. You expect me to just hand over what's rightfully mine after everything you've done. It's not just about the money, Anna, Claire said, falsely sincere. It's about family. We're still sisters, after all. I stared at her in disbelief. You lost the right to call me sister when you betrayed me. There was a heavy silence between us, tension thick in the air. Then, Claire's mask slipped, revealing her true nature. Fine. If you're going to be selfish, let's talk legalities. Dad's will favors the first grandchild. My baby will secure the inheritance for Ethan and me. Her words hit me hard. This was her plan, to use her pregnancy to manipulate our father's will in her favor. You're unbelievable, Claire. You think you can manipulate everyone to get what you want? Not this time. I won't let you, I said firmly. Claire smirked, her eyes cold and calculating. We'll see, Anna. We'll see how long you can keep up this act, she sneered. I turned to leave, my mind spinning. Driving away, a plan began to form. Claire and Ethan were playing a dangerous game, but now I knew the rules. It was time for them to realize I wasn't just a pawn in their twisted game. The days after my confrontation with Claire were filled with intense preparation for the looming legal battle over my father's estate. I sought out legal advice, determined to safeguard what was rightfully mine and my father's legacy from Claire and Ethan's greed. As I delved into the legal details, shocking news reached me. Eakin's business, once touted with confidence, had collapsed. They were drowning in debt, unable to sustain their lavish lifestyle. This revelation shed light on their sudden return and their desperation for the inheritance. Meeting with my lawyer, Miss Harper, we discussed our strategy. They're financially and legally trapped, she noted, examining the documents. Your sister's claim about the will doesn't hold up legally. We can challenge it. Miss Harper's confidence was reassuring, but I knew Claire and Ethan wouldn't give up easily. They were like cornered animals, unpredictable and dangerous. My resolve was tested sooner than I anticipated. One evening, returning home from work, I found Claire waiting on my doorstep, her expression a mix of defiance and desperation. "Anna, we need to talk," she said, her voice shaky. "I have nothing to say to you, Claire. This matter is with the lawyers now," I replied, trying to pass by her. She stepped forward, blocking my path. "Please, Anna. I'm not pregnant. It was a lie, a plan Ethan and I made to influence Dad's will." Her confession, though shocking, didn't surprise me. It was just another deceit in their long list. "So you've been lying all this time. What now, Claire? Ready to give up?" I asked coldly. Claire's eyes filled with tears, but they didn't sway me. "I don't know what to do. Ethan's business is ruined. We're losing everything. I need your help." Anna, her plea for help, after all they'd done, was almost laughable. "You want my help after everything you've done? You're delusional," I said, pulling away from her. "The sister I knew died when you betrayed me. You made your choice, Claire. Live with it." Leaving Claire alone, I entered my house, closing the door on her and our past. It felt liberating. I was free from our toxic relationship. That night, in the quiet of my living room, I realized this was more than an inheritance battle. It was about my liberation, closing the chapter on Claire and Ethan's treachery and moving on. The following weeks were a whirlwind of legal battles. Claire and Ethan's desperation grew as their financial troubles mounted. Despite it all, I remained strong, with Miss Harper's help and my newfound resolve. The day of the court hearing arrived, the atmosphere tense and charged. The courtroom was cold, contrasting sharply with the simmering emotions within. Ethan and Claire sat together, trying to maintain a facade of unity, but their strained appearances betrayed their true feelings. As the proceedings began, Miss Harper skillfully dismantled each of their arguments. Claire's lie about her pregnancy was exposed, further weakening their case. I watched Claire as the reality sank in. The confident, manipulative sister I once knew was gone, replaced by someone consumed by the consequences of her actions. During a recess, Claire approached me, desperation in her eyes. "Anna, please. I know I don't deserve your mercy, but we're ruined. We have nothing." Her words, once persuasive, now had no effect on me. "You brought this upon yourselves, Claire. You chose greed and deceit, and now you must face the consequences." The final judgment was a clear win for me. The judge ruled in my favor, ensuring that the inheritance rightfully stayed with me. Claire and Ethan left the courtroom defeated, their schemes crumbling. But as I walked out, a sense of closure washed over me. This wasn't just a legal win. It was a personal victory over my past demons. Claire and Ethan's downfall was the justice they deserved. But for me, it marked a new beginning, free from the pain they caused. In the days that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life, leaving behind the shadows of Claire and Ethan. The scar they left would always be a part of me, but it no longer controlled me. I had become stronger, more resilient, and had a better understanding of myself and my values. As I sat in my garden one evening, watching the sunset, I understood that real victory wasn't in revenge or the pain of those who hurt me. It was in the peace and inner strength I discovered, the power to move on and embrace new beginnings. "Hey, isn't today our honeymoon, when we're supposed to go on a trip together? Why did you rip up my passport just as we were getting ready to go?" I couldn't believe what my husband had done. He ripped my passport without asking, looking really pleased with himself. It made me so mad. "I never wanted to go on this trip with you. I was always going to go with my mom instead." Before we got married, I felt some tension, but I didn't realize how messed up things were between my husband and his mom. Nobody in my friend group ever talked about their mother-in-law taking over their honeymoon. I was shocked and mad about this crazy situation, but mostly I felt super weirded out. I started to question if marrying him was a big mistake. As he pulled out scissors and started cutting up my passport, I saw my mother-in-law grinning like crazy and knew I had to escape from there fast. It was totally unexpected, but I had just the right proof to take them both down. My name's Sarah. I'm 29 and been working for 7 years. Recently, my boyfriend of 4 years popped the question I've been waiting for. Now I'm knee-deep in planning our wedding and honeymoon. I met my husband after I started working. I've always been more on the quiet side, and although I had a boyfriend in college, things just didn't work out. After that, I didn't really date anyone seriously for a while. So when I started working, it was a big surprise to find myself getting married before many of my colleagues. I think I was even more shocked than anyone else. My husband was a senior at the company when I first joined, and he was always there to help me when I struggled with new tasks. Even though the only guy I dated before him was a classmate, there was something different about someone who was 5 years older. I found him reliable and trustworthy. When he asked me out on our first date, I was ecstatic. I still hold dear the dolphin figurine we bought at the aquarium during that date. When he mentioned wanting to date with marriage in mind, I felt like I was on cloud 9. We went on many dates, and he proposed to me at that same aquarium where we had our first date. Could I really be this happy? That night, I was so excited that I couldn't sleep, and I still remember that feeling vividly. With my mind still filled with happiness, we quickly decided to visit his parents' home the next week. But during the visit, I started feeling unsure about our marriage. My father-in-law was nice, but my mother-in-law didn't seem to like me much. She even said, "You could have married someone more impressive than this ordinary girl." Hearing that made me doubt our future together and feel really anxious. But I figured everyone gets nervous before their wedding, right? So I pretended everything was okay and continued planning for the wedding. Then one day, while talking about our life after marriage, both my husband and his mom just assumed I quit my job. Even though I used to think quitting work after getting married was nice, I didn't see it as an option now. Looking back, I think my worries about marriage stopped me from considering leaving my job, where I felt safe. Even though my mother-in-law kept suggesting I quit, I decided to keep working at the same company as my husband, ignoring her. During our wedding planning, we didn't see eye to eye on when to officially register our marriage. He wanted to do it sooner, but we decided to go with his choice and did it shortly after. The process was pretty ordinary, but knowing we were officially married made me really happy. We talked about having a small, cozy wedding, but it seems he mentioned this to his mom. She called the next day. "You're planning a small wedding for Edward. Please don't make decisions without considering everyone's opinion. The wedding should be big and fancy. I'll make sure it's what Edward wants. And please keep your guest list short, just your parents and close friends. Your friends wouldn't add much excitement to the wedding anyway." I was overwhelmed with all the opinions flying around about the venue and guest list. It was frustrating that my soon-to-be mother-in-law thought she could control everything. But I didn't want to argue with her. Even though I had a lot to say, I kept quiet, thinking maybe this was just how weddings went. I ended up inviting only my parents and close friends, like she wanted. But her interference didn't stop there. She had something to say about everything: the schedule, entertainment, decorations, and food. If we followed all her suggestions, we'd blow our budget. At first, Edward's family agreed to split the wedding costs with us. But then that changed. Suddenly, it was all about the bride's family footing the bill, and we were way over budget. I had to cover all the extra expenses she wanted, so the wedding turned into this flashy event, completely different from the simple ceremony I had envisioned. I tried to make some changes secretly to save money, but she found out and scolded me, saying it looked cheap because I didn't listen to her. After the wedding, I hoped for some distance from my mother-in-law, but then my husband dropped a bombshell. I was tired of her meddling in the wedding plans, and despite knowing I wanted space from her, he insisted we move in with her. Our new place, which we'd already arranged, was suddenly canceled without my knowledge. All our stuff was redirected to my husband's family home. I was speechless, shocked that everything was decided without asking me. I handled all the wedding planning by myself. Even when I warned Edward about going over budget if we followed all of his mom's requests, he ignored me. My anxiety, which was already high, skyrocketed. We had planned to go on a honeymoon abroad after the wedding. It was a dream destination for me, and the thought of it felt unreal. But my growing discomfort with Edward's strange behavior and the idea of living with my mother-in-law when we got back put a damper on my excitement. Just like with the wedding planning, Edward wasn't very helpful with organizing our honeymoon. It was odd that he took charge of booking flights and hotels. I assumed he picked a romantic place for our honeymoon, and I was thrilled. Even though I ended up paying for everything, I was just happy he was pitching in, given all the excitement before the wedding. But I didn't realize this was a sign of things to come. Finally, the wedding was over, and amidst the chaos, our honeymoon day arrived. Despite some lingering doubts about the wedding and moving in with his mom, I was determined to enjoy the trip with Edward. But as I woke up in the middle of the night to get ready for our flight, Edward dropped a bombshell like it was no big deal. "Sarah, I'm going with my mom instead." As I was checking our luggage, I couldn't believe what Edward had just said. "What? What do you mean? This is our honeymoon, not just any trip. Why would your mom be coming? And we only booked for two for the flights and hotel." I was shocked, trying to make sense of it all when Edward dropped another bombshell. "I never said I was going on this trip with you, did I? Don't be ridiculous. I'm going with my mom. A trip with her is more important than our honeymoon. It's a thank you trip for all she's done for me. You stay here and clean the house from top to bottom." With that, Edward started tearing up my passport. I couldn't believe it, unable to speak, just watching as he destroyed it. Right then, my fully dressed mother-in-law barged into the room without even knocking. "Edward, are you ready?" Seeing her, Edward's face lit up. "Yeah, we're all set. Finally, we can go on this trip without any interruptions." They both chuckled, leaving me feeling disgusted. It hit me then. I was about to marry a nightmare. I'd been wondering how to get along with my mother-in-law, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined. I realized I'd made a huge mistake from the very beginning. "I see now what kind of people you both are." I couldn't hold back. But they just laughed it off as if my words were meaningless. They left together, leaving me feeling betrayed. I had been happy thinking Edward was helping with the honeymoon, but it was just a setup for him to go with his mother. He'd been planning it all along, booking everything under her name and leaving me to foot the bill. The betrayal stung, but my anger outweighed my sadness. The wedding and honeymoon I had always dreamed of were supposed to be unforgettable moments with the love of my life. But they were ruined by my mother-in-law and husband. It felt surreal. At first, I couldn't believe it was happening. But soon, I realized I needed to take action fast. I had to get a divorce. Interestingly, I had something that could help me. I had started recording to capture memories of the most important events in my life. My wedding and honeymoon. Since the wedding preparations, I had been recording various moments on audio. What began as a way to cherish memories slowly turned into documenting my mother-in-law's hurtful actions and harassment. Sometimes I thought about stopping because I figured I'd never listen to these recordings again. But it's ironic how valuable they turned out to be. Just days after moving in, I found myself repacking my things. It didn't take long since I hadn't unpacked much. I couldn't help but wonder if my husband and his mother were already at the airport. The thought made me furious, so I tried to push it aside. Even though I'd only been there briefly, I wanted to erase any trace of myself from that house. So I cleaned thoroughly everywhere I'd been. While tidying the living room, I stumbled upon something shocking. Evidence that my husband was stealing money from his company. In his role overseeing sales, he was reporting lower earnings to the company and keeping the extra cash for himself. And it seemed his mother was involved too. She had detailed notes of the actual sales, the money he pocketed, and even listed all the luxury items he bought her with the stolen money. It was a lot. I couldn't believe they'd left such evidence out in the open. Finding out about my husband's wrongdoing left me horrified. I realized the seriousness of the situation. For a moment, I thought about trying to smooth things over since I also worked at the company. But then I thought, why should I help someone who ditched me for a honeymoon with his mother? So, armed with evidence of the embezzlement, I went to the company. Even though they were supposed to be on their honeymoon, my colleagues were shocked to see me in the office. As everyone bombarded me with questions about why I was at work instead of on my honeymoon, I decided I had nothing to hide. I explained that my husband and mother-in-law had gone on the honeymoon instead, that my passport was destroyed, and that I had paid for the entire trip. My colleagues, bosses, and superiors were shocked and furious on my behalf. I thanked them for their concern and headed to the executive area of the company. What my colleagues didn't know was that one of the top executives at the company is my uncle. I never mentioned this to anyone, not even my husband or mother-in-law. I didn't want people to think I got the job because of family connections, so I applied and secured the position based on my own merit. Since my uncle isn't involved in human resources, I asked him not to reveal our relationship before the orientation. Though surprised, he respected my decision and assured me that we would maintain a professional relationship at work. As a child, my uncle treated me like his own, showering me with love and indulging my wishes. We even went on trips together when I was younger. Despite my parents scolding me for asking him to buy me things, he adored me. Since joining the company, our paths rarely crossed except for a brief exchange during orientation. When I visited his office, my uncle's warm smile quickly faded as he sensed something was wrong. "Why are you here? Weren't you supposed to be on your honeymoon?" Seeing his familiar face, I couldn't hold back my tears. Through sobs, I told him everything that had happened. He was visibly furious, a side of him I had never seen before. I explained my husband's embezzlement and handed over the evidence. My uncle promised to hold a board meeting immediately to address the situation. After promising to address the situation, my uncle asked about my plans for the day. When I mentioned heading home, he suggested we grab some food together before he dropped me off. Despite the unbelievable betrayal I had experienced, I felt genuinely grateful for the warm-hearted people in my life who cared for me. A week later, when my husband and mother-in-law returned from what was supposed to be our honeymoon, I received an immediate call. My husband was furious that I hadn't picked them up from the airport or cleaned the house as instructed. He demanded to know where I was. With the support of my uncle and parents, I had already hired a top-notch divorce lawyer, and the process was underway. Without giving my husband a chance to speak, I said firmly, "You two are loud and annoying. I don't want to hear your voices anymore. Why would I pick up someone I'm divorcing? And why would I follow your orders to clean?" He was momentarily stunned but quickly resumed his ranting. "Do you think it's okay to speak to me like that? I did you a favor by marrying you. If I divorce you, you'll never find someone else. My mom's furious too. If you come back now and cook for us, I might forgive you. We're tired of foreign food. Make us some traditional meals." His words were shocking. After his scheme with the passport and going on a trip with his mother, I saw his true colors. It dawned on me that I had never truly known him. I had been reflecting on this realization for the past few days. "I've already consulted a lawyer about our divorce. Please discuss any related matters with them." "Divorce? What are you talking about? We're not getting a divorce." I heard his mother in the background, shouting for him to hand her the phone and calling me names. "Well, do as you please. By the way, I informed the company about your embezzlement. I think I'll be calling you in soon. Maybe you should get a lawyer too." Bye. I sensed his panic on the other end, but it wasn't my problem anymore. He kept calling, so I just blocked his number. My uncle knew our honeymoon dates, so right after our call, the company summoned my husband. With the evidence I provided, they verified the information and confirmed the discrepancies in the payments. It turned out the amount my husband embezzled was huge. In front of the company's executives, my husband desperately tried to defend himself. He made up a story, claiming I was the real embezzler and he had tried to stop me. At that point, my uncle couldn't hold back and shouted, "My niece would never do such a thing. We've confirmed that you and your mother committed the embezzlement. You're lucky we haven't involved the police yet." Realizing his scheme had unraveled and that I had connections in senior management, my husband looked defeated. That day, I went to the company to return the wedding gifts to my colleagues. Despite our marriage ending so soon after the wedding, they all refused to take them back, saying they were given with heartfelt blessings. Surrounded by their warmth, my husband approached me, looking desperate. "Why didn't you tell me about your family connection? I'm sorry, truly. Can we start over? Can you ask your uncle to let me stay in the company and make the embezzlement charges disappear?" Disgusted, I replied. "Do you even hear yourself? Are you serious? Divorce is the only way forward now. Reflect on your actions and face the consequences." After I pushed him away, my colleagues intervened and called security, who removed him from the premises. He was immediately fired. As for the embezzlement, the company is pursuing damages from him. Upon learning about the situation, my mother-in-law attempted to contact my family repeatedly. However, after consulting my sensible father-in-law, the call ceased. I had always wondered why my father-in-law had agreed to our honeymoon, but when he came to apologize later, admitting his mistake, it became clear. He had believed my mother-in-law was going on a domestic trip with her friends. He was looking forward to a peaceful week without her constant demands and nagging about shopping and dining out, hoping for a brief respite. When I returned home after learning about the ridiculous actions of my husband and mother-in-law, my father-in-law agreed that I should go back to my parents' home and helped me pack. Emotions were running high, and without much discussion, I left for my family home. I knew my father-in-law, being genuine, kind, and rational, would have stopped everything if he had known. He was the only reasonable person I could trust in that house. Although I was the victim, it was incredibly embarrassing to think my honeymoon had been hijacked by my mother-in-law. I even considered resigning from my job. My parents advised me to take a break from work for a while. However, my uncle suggested that working might help distract me, and he discussed it with the CEO. They arranged for me to be transferred to a branch office. The divorce process with my husband went surprisingly smoothly, thanks to an excellent lawyer. However, I later found out my father-in-law was involved. When we were planning our wedding and discussing expenses, it turned out my husband had almost no savings. My in-laws were just an average working-class family. With my mother-in-law's spending habits, they had little savings, as my father-in-law mentioned with a wry smile. The alimony I received considering our short marriage was surprisingly substantial. Shockingly, my father-in-law sold the family home to cover it. Their home wasn't in a city center but in a close-knit community. When we got married, my mother-in-law invited the neighbors. They witnessed me returning to the family home on the day I was supposed to be leaving for our honeymoon, luggage in hand. With the neighborhood's penchant for gossip, rumors spread like wildfire. Over time, these rumors became exaggerated to the point where living in that area became unbearable. Initially, my mother-in-law, always concerned about appearances, approved of our marriage because both my husband and I worked for prestigious companies. Having her son and daughter-in-law working for a major company was a status symbol for her. However, with rumors swirling due to her actions, she likely couldn't bear to stay in that house. Additionally, my father-in-law probably felt responsible for covering the damages from my husband's embezzlement. While I harbor nothing but disdain for both my husband and mother-in-law, I genuinely feel sorry for my father-in-law. After being fired and ordered to pay damages, my husband apparently suffered a mental breakdown. Unable to work, he's been moping around in a small apartment he moved to. Seeing her son so downcast, my mother-in-law also became reclusive, as my father-in-law told me. In fact, my father-in-law, fed up with my mother-in-law, was considering divorce as he didn't want to spend his later years with her. He asked if I could introduce him to the lawyer I had used. I immediately contacted my uncle, who got in touch with the lawyer. It might take some time, but I hope my father-in-law can live the life he wishes. Thanks to the intervention of the company's CEO and my uncle, I was transferred to a branch office where I'm surrounded by supportive colleagues and superiors. I'm eternally grateful to my uncle. The only regret I have is missing out on the country we plan to visit for our honeymoon. Once things settle down, I hope to take a relaxed trip abroad.